Oh, and welcome back to the Radio Games Club. I'm joined today by a whole quartet of co-hosts. We have Alex and Alex,
Hello.
Wyatt,
Hello.
myself, Ryan, and newcomer Tal.
Hello.
Welcome to our Dragon Age Inquisition discussion. So, we've been playing Dragon Age Inquisition, and we normally do a monthly Game Pass Games Club, where we'll play some games that are on Game Pass. But with BioWare releasing Dragon Age Veilguard, we're all very, very curious. At this point, we're recording. The game is not in anyone's hands. Reviews are out, and opinions are pretty good, with some people being more mixed, but a lot of conflicting information. So we're going to be talking about our thoughts on Inquisition and leading into
In 2 days, we'll know.
Yeah, in 2 days we'll know. But, we're going to be talking about Inquisition and our lead-in into Veilguard and what we hope we get out of Veilguard. And also, we'll briefly mention Origins in 2, kind of in reference to what Veilguard is at the end. So, as always, the first portion of this video is going to be completely spoiler-free. We're going to be treating it as if you have never heard anything about Dragon Age, and we're just going to be talking about the important things from what we played of Inquisition, which we didn't all finish it. A couple of us have. I believe Tal and I have fully beaten Inquisition more than once at this point. A couple of us have played about 4 to 8 hours was the guideline for this. So we're mostly talking about that segment of the game. Okay, so Dragon Age. I know I'm going to open this discussion with a sort of thematic talk discussion here, because I think this is the thing that, with Veilguard coming out, is on the top of everyone's mind in terms of, like, the art style is different. The color choices are very bright. Like, there's a lot of purples and stuff like that. And people, I think, when they think of Dragon Age, still think of Origins, which is, like, gritty blood everywhere. Playing Inquisition, none of that is really new. Like, Inquisition has very similar... It swap the purple out for green, and you've got the same thing going on. So I think
maybe slightly more stylized than
Yeah.
Inquisition, but I wouldn't say that it's like a massive leap.
I know
considering
that every
previous
time
stuff.
I've died, my screen has been surrounded in green. I've died a lot.
I heard somebody, like, when that first kind of bad, pretty bad trailer for Veilguard came out.
Yeah, we're not gonna miss words.
Oh.
That first Veilguard trailer set alarm clocks, or alarms, not alarm clocks, alarmos off in all of us.
Well,
Yeah,
so-
I don't know why they led with that one.
Well, anyway, when it came out, I heard somebody online was like, "Oh, this is the worst tone. Dragon Age is grimdark." And I was like, "Whoa, I would really not say other
Yeah.
than, like, select portions in Origins are
You don't
really
get
that
romance in
grimdark."
Grimdark.
I saw someone describe it as low fantasy today, and I was like, low fantasy?
People
That's...
don't know
Mage
what genres
nukes are a
mean.
plot point constantly.
I think
Yeah.
that you could consider the art style low fantasy.
Yeah,
Especially
I think that's
in
what people
Origins.
mostly mean.
Like it's grounded in, like, a medieval aesthetic. Besides the outfits are kind of
Absolutely not based in any history
but,
whatsoever.
like, there's a lot of parts where it looks like you could be going through medieval England. There just happens
Yeah.
to be elves with
Mhm.
bald heads.
No,
And-
I love my historically accurate armor where I have giant pauldrons and a bare chest as
How about
as a
just-
male Qunari.
How about just body paint and pretty much nothing else?
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
if we want to talk about historically accurate armor, Hawk's default armor looks like something taken straight out of Final Fantasy. It's
Yeah.
it's insanity.
It's a Final Fantasy 16 armor set for sure.
Looks great, but also ridiculous.
Yeah, so I don't put a lot of weight in those comments, but I do think Inquisition, as someone who has played all 3 Dragon Age games before this, they'll note I only actually played 2 this month. I had never played 2 before and played it before starting Inquisition, and somehow managed to beat both within this month, which I
How?
didn't
You got
play
more
any
free
other
time than
games.
me.
Literally how?
2's very short, to be fair. There is, like, a definite change over the games going from Origins to 2 to Inquisition, but there's a lot of people that go, like, Dragon Age has never been a comedy thing. Like, there's never been comedy in Dragon Age, and I would say that's complete and utter poppycock.
Yeah.
A better term.
Varric
Like, Alistair
as a
cracks
character-
jokes constantly.
Varric as a
Um,
character would not exist in an actual like grimdark setting.
Yeah.
Like absolutely
Yeah.
not.
He'd be the first to die.
Speaking of Varric,
And God help us, he keeps living.
Somehow.
speaking of Varric, there's something with his design in this game that I want to mention right now. I'm not sure I can say it live on Twitch and eventually Apple Podcast or whatever, but there's something about the look of his necklace that
in Inquisition
if you
or
were,
Veilguard?
if you
Yeah.
were in Inquisition.
Okay.
If you were a gay man, particularly in the 80s and 90s, it may
Oh,
look
yeah.
like something suggestive.
Oh yeah.
Huh? I
I'm
haven't
gonna have to
got the
look at
close
it
look at his
again.
necklace.
I don't know what
It looks like a ring for a certain appendage.
Oh,
A
you know,
non-limb
Varric would own that. Varric would own that. You know, I'm not surprised. What a great way to start this podcast.
So that's neat.
It's something that once I saw it with his character, I can't unsee it.
Did I point that out to you? Did I ruin that for you?
I don't
That's
recall.
perfect. It's perfect.
No.
Okay,
think
well
it
let's
has lore,
jump
too.
into Inquisition a little bit, and cycle back around to Veilguard after we've talked about Inquisition for a little while, because I think playing through Inquisition, there's a really interesting like set of things going on here where Dragon Age started as more of a CRPG, like a real time with pause combat system. It moved into Dragon Age 2, which is still that, but a little bit less complicated is maybe a good way to put it. And Inquisition is kind of fully moving away from that to a degree. Like, if you play it on PC without a controller plugged in, you can still kind of play it as a CRPG, but it's a little weird if to play it that way. It mostly feels like a mix of a like action combat system and a tactical combat system, but I don't actually think it works that well in practice, which is why I'm
It's
excited for
odd.
Veilguard's combat, because I think Inquisition, like, I don't know about you all, but I wound up at a point just going in Inquisition and turning it to casual to get through the story faster, because there was like, I was not having it with the combat system at a certain point.
I've been trying that. I'm still getting the shit beaten out of me. I don't know why I'm just bad at games that are universally beloved.
Are
I
you?
don't think
I don't get it.
I mean, I'm assuming you're like equipping new gear as you get it, right?
I equipped like the bonus chest that you get at the beginning because of the version
Have you
of the
been-
game that we have, where it's like, oh, this is like the dragon armor, whatever, on the sorter.
Have you been crafting armor? I tend to find that you get much better.
Oh yeah, you
crafted
definitely
stuff is
do.
really, really good.
Where do you
Um,
craft things
No.
You can.
In
besides potions?
There's-
And I've looked at that thing, and it's like, you have no potions available to craft. So I'm just like, okay,
in like the hub area.
Yeah,
either,
there's a spot in the hub area where you can do it.
either one of the hubs.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
Are-
But it also.
I
Might
don't
just
know
be...
if I've gotten to the hub yet. Can you do that at camps?
Or not,
Well, you can't
not
you can't do
like-
it. You can do it at Haven, which you have at the start of the game.
Yeah, Haven.
Alex, the city that you're in at the
Where
start of the
you-
game is Haven. There,
Like
you
the
are.
big- the
There
big
is no way you
church.
are not at Haven. You start the
That's
game
a
in Haven.
city?
Oh, it's a town.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It's your hub. It's your.
You have to go there to deploy into missions into the game.
The reason it's really confusing is if you're in Haven, you have to go outside of the town wall to get to the blacksmith. Because he's on
Yeah.
the other side of the wall
What?
for some reason. I don't think
So
it's
if
a
you-
great spot either.
Do you know?
but-
Do you know where you go talk to like Cassandra, right? With all the tents, and like all the soldiers are training. Like Cassandra and Cullen are
Cullen's
kind of
over
in
there.
the same area.
From the opening bit, yes.
Yeah, so there's the big church, and then if you go down the steps all the way to like the big wall fence thing, and you go through it and take a left, there's like more stuff over there where you can craft like armor and you can craft weapons and you can upgrade them.
I haven't had a chance to get back to the city.
Have
I've
you
been
just
stuck on
been in the hinterlands the whole time?
Yes, I've been
Okay.
stuck there for.
You
5
can leave
hours.
at any time.
Yeah, and so one thing I would recommend
Cross the hinterland.
So,
going
this-
back to the,
Oh, okay.
the combat, I feel like it kind of like I feel like the game kind of doesn't really expect you to use tactical mode, and yet in some fights you have to use tactical mode to get through
I
it.
agree
Oh
with that.
no.
I
Oh
basically use
god.
tactical mode to
I've
like
hated
position
that
my
turn-based
I
crap. It feels awful.
I basically
Oh, I love
use
it.
tactical mode to like position my if I had like an archer and a mage for instance, I would position them kind of out of the way of the battle so that everyone else focuses on like Cassandra and I.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all I used it for. It's nice to be able to get your like squishy party members kind of out of the fight.
See,
for a
my
bit.
problem with that is they don't always listen to you. And
No.
my preference, and I think Alex's preference as well for this, is I like either full turn-based like Baldur's Gate, where it's like
Yeah,
I can
that's-
think through what I'm doing fully, and there is
Yeah.
a structure to turns,
Mhm.
or
That's
I
what
like full action, like what Veilguard looks like it is, where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna go and like I have all of the buttons at my disposal, I can play this as an action game, and then like if I want to use specific
thank God.
abilities, I can pause. I
I-
prefer games to be on one of the two sides
that-
when it comes to RPGs.
Yeah. I've just felt regret after regret playing Inquisition. It's like, oh, I've made the worst possible decision for
If
me to
you-
try to enjoy this time and time again.
If you haven't left
I
the
r-
hinterlands too, there are spots you can easily walk into, and in fact, it asks you to walk into that are higher level than you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Like,
got
I can't
mauled by a
find
bunch
where
of
I'm
demons.
supposed to go for the next. Yeah, that
You
happened
probably
multiple.
have
That's
to go to
that's what I was
Haven.
talking about with the dying with green all around me multiple times.
Yeah, there's a
Yep.
couple there's a couple rifts where you have to progress
I've
further into the
been-
game and then come back.
I've been trying to find like the next objective, and I think it has something to do with a stable person. But there's so many things where it's like, no,
So
you
you
have
don't
to
even
get
have
this
to
much
do
power
that.
before it progresses.
You don't
that's
even
where
have
you
to do the stable
First
first.
mission.
That's where you are.
I've been stuck in this godforsaken area for 5 fucking hours.
Oh,
I
no!
died to the first rift closing boss 7 times on easy.
Like the one in the
Oh,
tutorial?
no.
Yes.
I didn't know you could die to that, I'll be honest.
I have
He
more
doesn't
party
mean the
lives
one
than
in
I
the
can
tutorial.
count
He means
on all
the
these
one.
appendages.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Alex
honey,
means the
part of
one
makes
when
me
you go
blue.
back to the breach, not the tutorial one. I talked to him about that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which that one
Well-
also gave me trouble.
Um,
So I want
either
to
way,
get into
Alex,
that a
if
little
you-
bit.
If
'Cause
you
I
play
think-
it further, you probably have to leave the hinterlands and go back to Haven to get
You
the
do,
next
yeah.
mission.
Once
probably
you
don't
talk to the
have any
stable master,
mission.
you have to leave and go back to Haven. So you might have talked to the stable master and just stayed. Because he gives you a quest that it probably swapped to. You don't ever actually have to do that quest. In fact, you get a funny line later that's going, "Oh, I forgot about the horses." If you don't ever do it. Which
I
didn't.
can feel Alex's anger just
But
coming
like,
through my
so this
screen
is my
right
problem
now.
with Inquisition, right? Because I think that's a very
This is
like
my
Alex is
biggest problem
playing
with
it
the game,
up,
too.
but this is a very relatable experience starting this
Yeah.
game. Because like,
It's so exhausting, and half of it is me doing it to myself. And because like, I like sword and board is okay. Like there are some fun abilities for a fighter.
It's
Seeing
kind of the
Veilguard
worst.
stuff, I really want to play a mage. That
I'll play
magic
everything
looks
in
really
Veilguard.
fun.
All of them look
Oh,
really
yeah.
fun.
I've had a lot of
Um,
fun with the bull charge for that's like my main spamming ability. That and the grappling hook have been what I've been spamming.
Yeah.
I kind of almost exclusively play mage. I feel like the other class, mostly warrior, I feel like gets very samey.
Mage
but,
and Rogue
like,
feel good to
Rogue-
play.
I-
Warrior
the one-
Yeah.
is weird.
The one
in
thing that
theory.
keeps bothering
I've been
me
playing
because
like two-handed warrior, and I don't know. I found a build that's like kind of fun. It uses a lot of like stuns and like keeping enemies on their like on their backs the whole time, which is kind of fun. But I haven't really experimented with the other classes, so maybe I'm just kind of missing out.
but I like playing as Stolas, and I like the big like, oh, you're far away, you crit with Bianca as Varric. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel unclean, and I get this whenever there's like a like specific potion crafting things for the okay, you're gonna have limited amounts of heals for an area until you rest, stuff like that. So we don't give the mage healing abilities. I feel unclean when I play a wizard that
So
can't heal.
that's actually that's a Inquisition specific thing. All the other
Yeah.
games have healing spells, and they are relatively balanced because they have a long cooldown and they take a lot of resource. But you can have a healer. In the other games, you can have as many potions as you want. They just have like a 20-second cooldown, which
There's
I
definitely-
prefer. I think in this style.
There's something about not Veilguard, sorry, Inquisition to me that feels very like what's the
You
word?
fill me with
It's
unease.
it's in like sort of a transition.
Yeah,
This game
exactly.
feels really in the middle between a more CRPG style game and a more action style game, and it's in kind of an awkward spot.
It was like the way that you attack is you hold down a trigger, which is like this was my biggest problem with Final Fantasy 15 as well. Is you don't feel like you're doing anything because you're just holding a button the whole time. And like there would be no difference from me holding that button to taping the trigger down because it just doesn't do anything.
If you're playing keyboard and mouse, believe it or not, the attack button like that is R.
Oh.
Because it's probably like toggling an auto attack, right? So
no, you hold it down.
Wait, what are you talking about? The attack button? I'm playing keyboard and mouse, and the attack button is left click.
R. It's R or left click.
Okay, well that's important context. You can also left click to do it.
Click. Okay, well maybe it might differ too if you're playing warrior. I'm playing mage, so left click. It's easier for me to hit R because it just like auto targets. Where left
when I was on,
click on the
whenever I hot swapped to Solus, when the rest of my party died, it was always holding down.
Maybe I just have
click.
a different setting.
So, okay, this entire conversation, I think.
It's true the problems with Inquisition. It's
but also, I think it explains our collective indifference to Veilguard being like more of a straight up action game, because I don't think
I have opinions about that.
At least for me, I guess I don't want to speak for everyone else, but for me, it's like
you can speak for me. It's okay.
They haven't really found like a sweet spot for their combat system, right?
Yeah.
Like Origins was definitely fine for the time, but I don't think it's aged particularly gracefully. It's fine, but it's not really why I play Origins. Or any Dragon Age game for that matter. So for me, if we can get like a real time like actiony, combat system, but we still keep those good characters and that good story, I'm completely fine with that. Because it's not really why I played these games to begin with.
So I think I'm definitely in the minority when I say that I actually kind of like the tactical system in Inquisition. I feel like, so I like tactical fighting in games. I like to like have time to think about what I'm going to do and like pick what everyone's going to do. But I have ADHD and I don't like to wait for turns to happen. So it like, it kind of just works for my brain really well, I think. But I think I'm definitely in the minority when I say that.
I do agree
the
with a lot of
opposite. I'm ADD.
I'm the opposite.
So I have the same like problem, but the way that manifests for me in real time games is that I get distracted by something and then everyone's dead when I look back and I just like miss a 5-second period and something's going horribly wrong.
I have to either have Baldur's Gate 3 combat, or I have to be memorizing combos and using muscle memory and crap.
I do agree with a lot of that though, because I'm very similar. Where like I'm very impatient and I just want to hit things with a giant sword.
I also think
like,
Inquisition.
I'll take a few seconds to position Varric and position Solus and like, okay, I want you guys to attack these guys, do whatever elemental weaknesses or whatever, and then I get to go in and swing a giant sword around my head, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I think for me,
feel like
go ahead.
My problem is that I don't. And this might be a controversial take because I know people like managing their party in Dragon Age in particular, but honestly in most games I just don't want to have to care about the rest of my party.
Oh, that is a spicy.
That's a take.
Not like lore wise. I want them there. I want them to do things, and like I'm okay with like equipping them gear and stuff. But when I'm in combat, I want to think about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't really have to be like, oh, I'm starting to lose this fight because Varric has moved into a bad spot.
I
agree with
feel that.
I like that
I've also been
invincible in Veilguard.
I've also been on record saying I hate being in leader roles. I hate managing like units and things like that. I just want to have to worry about how hard I can hit something.
I think for me the middle ground would have been doing something that's like because I love playing as my companions. I don't necessarily love controlling them while I'm still acting, but I like picking the character that I think is most useful in a given scenario and then going to them. Well, like I actually wound up playing Solus for most of my playthroughs because he was my mage for most of my stuff. So I would have him in there and I would play as him so I could be more tactical about what I was using skills on.
Mhm.
I'd also
Well,
like
like,
if
it's
revives
variety.
worked for me too.
Plus,
Mhm.
it really helps with variety too. Like if you're playing a particular class, whatever class your player character is, and you're like, I'm getting kind of bored of this, you can
Yeah.
swap to
Mm.
Cole, you can swap to Vivienne or whoever if you're getting bored and you just want to do something else for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
which
one
is
of my
nice.
worries about Veilguard, because I think Veilguard's got 3 really cool, well-designed like classes that you can play, but to my understanding, obviously we don't have the game in our hands, so I don't know if this is 100% how this works. Is you aren't able to control your companions directly. You only use their abilities. So
Yeah.
that means you're only ever gonna see the class that you're playing at a given point. Which, like, if it's a shorter game, because I'm fine with that in the case of Dragon Age 2, where Dragon Age 2 is a short game. Granted, you can play your companions in that one, but 2 is a short game, and there is lots of reason to replay it because there's a lot of different choice things. If Veilguard works that same way, I think that will lend itself to replaying it, and it won't be a problem. But if it doesn't work that same way, like there's not enough pathways in the story and whatnot, that'll be a problem.
So
I
to
think
answer your question about length for Veilguard, by the way, I looked it up. BioWare's estimation is that it takes 30 to 40 hours to beat the game, although
That's-
50 hours feels more realistic.
That's a little
Yeah,
long,
which
but
is
it's
fine.
not crazy long.
Mhm.
It's
Especially
not like
for
JRPG long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
Especially
like
compared
that's
to how long this game is if you want to 100% it.
I feel like that's long
Jesus.
enough for me to not want to do a repeat playthrough for a
It depends.
good
'Cause
long
I
while.
definitely
Yeah.
saw some people saying they were able to replay it much faster because you're not waiting for the story stuff to happen.
Hey, speaking of waiting, let's hope that there's not waiting for the mission table.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Veilguard.
So probably for me, one of the biggest missed opportunities, because I love the war room in concept, and I
Yeah.
love its
Same.
presentation
Yeah.
so much.
Love the
But
table.
the
Love your advisors like
stupid-
standing around it.
The
Alex has never
stupid
seen this in his life.
wait time.
I saw the very
Sorry.
beginning. I saw the very beginning of it. I know from other games that I hate war table stuff. It's just a managing thing that I can't wrap my head
Also,
around.
another.
There's some mods you can get if you really don't want to deal with it.
There you go. But
Yeah,
another thing I did want to point out too, before we get to the wait timers, one thing I liked
Mhm.
about it, and it kind of goes to other parts of the game, the like 2D art that they have for character portraits in
Oh
this
my
game,
god,
my
it's
God.
beautiful.
Beautiful.
real
so
good.
beautiful.
The like tarot
so-
art too is amazing.
Yeah,
for
we're almost like
companion
it's like
cards.
halfway
Kind of
between
better
tarot
than
art
the
and
rest of the
stained
game.
glass, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's
so
an
pretty.
aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing that a lot of us forget when we're talking about this game, like this won Game of the Year for a
Yeah.
lot of productions when it came out. And Veilguard is 2014. Like or not Veilguard. Inquisition is 2014. It's an older game than I think a lot of us think of, just because it's been 10 years, right? Like this is a thing from before a lot of the current RPGs kind of kickstarted what we think of as the modern ways to play an RPG. And
Yeah,
I
that was
think
a weird
that
year
kinda
before
shows.
Witcher 3.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like in this weird space where it was like right before the big breakout sort of like thing that changed how everyone played these games.
It definitely feels ahead of the curve on transitioning towards like an actiony RPG combat for a lot of
Yeah.
these series.
Mhm.
I also think right before we get back to the war table, the one other thing that I think is really important with the combat, having played through the whole game, is that the combat feels way better 20 hours in than it does
Yeah.
at the start, and it's a big problem because at the start, one of the things with Inquisition's combat is you don't have defensive options by default. You have
think
to
I have
unlock
one
them in your
defensive
skill
spell.
tree. So
Yeah,
you have to
even as
either mages get barriers, warriors get blocking with a shield skill or a parry with a two-handed weapon, but you
I'll
have
say
to
that
like
the-
find that in the skill tree and assign it to a button to have access to it, which
The-
kind of sucks.
The warrior
That's a bad
class
idea.
really clicked for me when you have the parry ability.
Yeah,
that is
I had to
so much
once I
fun.
got the parry, I was like, okay, I'm good to go. But it really feels bad before then because you're literally just like you walk up and you get hit and you just die because
Yeah.
there's literally nothing you can do. And I think that's the thing with Inquisition's combat design is I think they were still designing it as a CRPG, but the system is not a CRPG system anymore because you're not like
Yeah,
managing everyone concurrently most of the time. So
this is going back a little bit, but I think Tal or maybe Ryan, you had said this a minute ago, but like about how the game expects you to engage with it like it's a CRPG, and like like the difficulty and scenarios in the game almost expect you to use tactical mode, but the way it kind of throws tactical mode in there in the like the game doesn't look like it should require you to.
It also,
Yeah.
it doesn't make
And,
you
like,
do it. It's not. It's kind of hidden.
Dragon Age Origins or whatnot, many differences, but it has no. There's no expectation for you not to use. Like it's very clear that this is the way combat works.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to pause. Like you, if it's a simple fight, you can just run up and smack some stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Back to the war table. That was what I had on that. And
Yeah. So everything presentation wise with the war table, awesome. I love, even if they don't seem like that big of a deal, I love a lot of the smaller missions that you send your advisors out on. It's some cool flavor text, and it just feels like your whole Inquisition, your whole like organization is really starting to like make a difference, and it really adds to that scale that this game wants. However, all that being said,
big qualifier on it.
big qualifier. Before we get to wait timers, I also want to mention it's very annoying sometimes how like if you're entering a new area specifically for the Inquisitor's Path, they lock off two of the advisors just so that you can use one. And at that point, it's like, why even show that as an option? It makes it
just
seem more
tell me that
superficial.
one
Just
of these
tell me
people
that we
went and
send
did
in
this.
Cullen. That's it. You don't have to make.
Well,
me
it's also
pick Cullen
in
and
none
have
of the
everything
cases where
unlocked.
when you're unlocking a new area, does it matter which Inquisitor you send or which person you send?
Yeah.
Because they're all gonna just unlock it for you. So pointless in that case anyway.
Yeah.
I think
Cool idea, but doesn't really amount to much.
having gotten much further in the game, the biggest problem with the war table is it's buggy. Like it bugs out a bunch. There's a
as
couple
does
of side
everything.
quests
How
that are
so?
related to the war table. There's a really cool like side quest line that you can do a bit later in the game with some side characters where you like kind of form a D&D adventuring party is what it's themed after, and this is all done through the war table. And it's a really cool one, but there's a bunch of issues where if you like do certain main quests in specific orders, it just won't trigger. Like the thing that you need to finish it just will never trigger, and so you just never finish it because it just stops at a
Yeah,
certain
there's a
point.
lot of
And there's a lot
there's
of
a-
that with the war table.
yeah, there's not even with the war table, there's a lot of things that like just won't trigger right. Like party banter is just pretty much broken. You have to you basically have to mod the game if you want to hear the players, your companions talk to each other.
And mine worked fine the whole time. I got a lot of party banter, having not modded
Yeah, so
anything.
it still
I'm lucky.
happens, but there's something up with like the timer on it. It just doesn't quite work right,
Definitely
especially
feels
when
like
you're
there's
on
a lot of-
console.
It feels like there's a lot of silence sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
I think I had more luck in this playthrough on PC than I remember there being in PlayStation. So I'm
Yeah,
not
I was playing
sure
on
if
PC
that's-
too, so maybe there's a patch or something we got that didn't go to console.
I know that like there still is issues with it on PC, but
Yeah.
there's
It is-
it's a little different.
it is worth noting on that note. So this game was made in the Frostbite engine.
Yes.
Which, if you don't know how the Frostbite engine works, great for shooters, great for Battlefield. Absolutely terrible.
They had
for
to rebuild
almost
every
anything
single
else.
thing they needed that wasn't from an FPS. Like I think they
The
even
new
talked.
one-
Mark Dara mentioned that they didn't have a save system.
Oh
In
Jesus!
Frostbite, because Frostbite was never meant to save.
There was no inventory system. They had to completely build
All of
from
that had to be
scratch.
built from scratch.
The new one's in Unreal, right?
Nope, it's also in Frostbite.
Yeah,
Really?
but at least they've
Yeah.
had to try now. They've made a
Yeah,
bunch of games
you've
in
had.
Frostbite.
I think
Yeah.
someone said earlier that Inquisition feels like it's running on an engine that's held together with wishes and dreams or something.
Duct tape
Yeah.
and a prayer. Yeah.
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 It's like most of the time you can tell that it's like everything's functioning, but like just barely.
I think
I also want to. I think this is a good point to say. We're being very harsh right now, And I think that's
I'm saying all this with a place of love in my heart.
yeah. So I want to point that out specifically because we're being harsh, but we're being harsh because we're choosing not to talk about spoilers first. And the majority of the great stuff in this game is the story and the characters, which we're gonna have to talk about after the spoiler-free section. And I think overall, at least for me, like I still really like this game. I don't know that I would replay it, given how long the war table takes.
I
think that
want to
there's-
like this game so bad because I love RPGs.
I think you will like Veilguard, Alex. I think Inquisition is just not for you, and I say that Inquisition is barely for me with how it plays.
I think that there's something odd about this game too, where like I have a couple of times bounced off of this game kind of hard because I almost feel like, besides bugs, like the biggest issues with this game are front loaded at you.
Yeah, they're all thrown at you in the first section.
It doesn't
Like,
give a
it's
good
like
first impression.
The worst
Yeah.
of the like level design and like just weird idiosyncratic things about the game
You
are,
only
like,
have 2 buttons for the
immediately-
first like hour. It's really something.
immediately thrown at you.
The hinterlands in general really slows down the pace of the story in the first
So
section.
I was just
Without
about
it,
to ask,
it'd be
does the
firing on
game
all
feel?
cylinders.
I was gonna ask, like, does the game feel? Does it just feel like incredibly slow in multiple aspects to people, like with the story? But you explain that with like how that slows down. But also, I really don't feel like you move fast enough.
Yeah, you're
So
slow.
this
There's a
goes
reason
back-
for that.
There
this
is a
goes back
reason,
to
yep.
Frostbite.
Yeah. So there's a reason for that. So because developing a whole ass RPG in this engine was a complete mess, there's only so much that they can render at a time, which means that the speed for your character is incredibly slow, so that they can actually like call in what's happening in front of you.
It was the
And as a
Skyrim
result-
This
Force
is a
issue.
pretty good looking
Yeah.
game for 2014. Like there's a lot of the lighting looks really weird now, but for the time it was really really good. And that means there's a lot of
it's
tricks on
built
the
on that.
back end to make it work that don't feel so great in the gameplay.
And
Yeah.
the classic example is you
Oh.
can't have mounts. You
Know what you're
can
gonna say.
once you talk to like the horse guy, you can get horses for everyone and you can ride around. And there's even look at that. There's a sprint button. So not only do you go faster on your horse at a nice trot, but there's a sprint button, which makes
And
you
you
go
can
faster.
You can
right?
see the wind rushing by
Yeah.
you with
Right?
those speed lines.
Oh no! It just adds speed line.
Developer, I believe a developer has confirmed that if you are sprinting, if you are galloping on a horse, it actually does not increase your speed at all. It only looks like
Can
it
I
does.
say? Can
Yeah.
I
They
say?
literally
Did
could
we
not go any
need?
faster.
Did we need a developer to confirm that?
Yeah, it doesn't
It's,
feel
like, blatantly obvious.
No, but I have to say, it is nice to get it right from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
But
Also mention the horses feel
Oh, wait, I
completely
have something for
superfluous because I don't think I ever used a horse again after I got it because they're so
because
slow
The horse
compared to your
like
walking speed is like almost as
trot
fast.
speed is like whatever. Like
It's like
if-
1.1 times your walking speed or something.
That's
Oh,
exactly what I was
God.
gonna say.
I think I said to someone one time that like I feel like they just threw mounts in to be like as a buzzword. Like they were like, oh, all these other RPGs have mounts. We gotta have mounts. But I don't think any of the other Dragon Age games had mounts. I feel like they were just kind of
No, they didn't.
throwing them in.
I wonder if it
It's-
came from the idea of like, oh, you're gathering all these different resources for your Inquisition. Obviously, one of them has to be horses for all of your forces. Isn't it weird
Yeah.
that you don't use a horse?
Yeah, that you
throughout
don't
the
get a
entire
horse.
game?
Yeah.
I think that also like this game has very large levels. It would make sense to have a horse. I can see very easily a developer
Yes.
going, "Hey, why don't we add some horses? These levels can get kind of lengthy."
I don't know about that because I feel like with
Hinterlands
the
at
way the
Hinterlands
maps
and
are set
the-
up,
the Jaws of
trapped in
Akan.
the valley
They-
of the hinterlands.
the-
Are huge.
the maps almost feel sort of maze-like to me with like
Oh,
all
a lot
the
of them
mountains
do.
you have
They
to get
really
around,
do.
and there's just so much like everywhere you look, there is just so much stuff to explore crammed into it that I almost feel like there's no point to riding around on.
Well,
a
I
You
never
ever-
used
you
the
ever
horse
tried
At the
because of
very
that.
least, it's a large map, but it does feel dense.
You ever try
Yeah.
using a horse at the Storm Coast? Forget it.
And that's the weird thing is like
Forget it.
there's a lot of like a lot of people at the time called this like becoming more like an Ubisoft open world thing. I do still think a lot of the open world stuff is relatively fun, like the astrologiums where you're like doing the star aligning. I think it's a fun little mini game. The shard thing is fine.
It's very janky, but it's fun.
It's janky, but it's fine. Like none of them were super bad, but the problem is that Inquisition itself only has like I think 7 actual main story missions that you do.
What?
It's not many.
Yeah, it's not
yeah,
many.
it's really short. The
Now,
majority
to
of
be
the
fair,
length of the
those
game.
missions are pretty lengthy in and of themselves. But
Yeah,
for a
they're
full
all pretty
RPG,
meaty except for one of them. But most of them are meaty. But it's
Yeah, they
it's
kinda
really
take
like
you
you
through
spend
an
a lot of
area.
time doing just side stuff, but most of the side stuff is not really involved with the main story. It's not that interesting. There's like 1 or 2 side quests that are cool, but generally speaking, they're fetch quests.
it really feels like
Fetch quests are wait. Fetch quests being cool?
I just said they're not cool.
That's impressive. Oh.
no.
I feel
There's
like
1 or
this
2 that
game
are
has a
cool, but
really-
they're not fetch quests.
Oh.
Yeah, I think there's a really
Damn.
weird thing where like some of the companions and whatnot have really, really interesting quests,
Mhm.
and then you'll get like 2 steps forward, and it's like a farmer who's like, "Go kill 3 wolves."
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in the next
goat
section.
Meat
But
for me?
It really feels
Um,
like it's the all of these like padded missions and everything that's associated with that really feels like they were trying to kind of address the criticisms that were levied at Dragon Age 2, where it feels very closed off. It feels very like small scale, which isn't bad in and of itself. It's a lot of reused
it's
areas.
bad because Dragon
that's
Age
really
2,
the
every
problem.
dungeon was the same thing. They're
Yeah,
literally the
yeah.
same tile set.
But this feels
Not
like
even
this feels
moved,
like,
like,
oh,
the
a
same
lot of
thing.
people were. This feels like a lot of people were focusing on that. Let's try and do the exact opposite. Let's
Yeah.
try to bring it to as many different parts in Thetis as
When
humanly
the actual
possible.
problem in Dragon Age 2 was not like that it was too short, it was that there was no variety. Like you're in Kirkwall the whole time. Kirkwall's not a very pretty city. You go to a bunch of caves
Maybe that's
and you
why
go
people
to a
think
bunch
it's
of like
grimdark.
generic mountain forest, and that's basically it in that game. And that, to be fair, Inquisition has beautiful environments. Like a lot of Inquisition
Yeah,
is
it's
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Lighting
Um,
aside, because it looks unfinished in a lot of areas. It just looks like nothing is lit properly sometimes. It's very
the lighting
strange.
dates it.
I would say interiors actually look totally fine because they can kind of control their lighting a lot more. So when it comes in through windows and stuff, it looks totally
It's
fine.
a lot of exterior
but
lighting looks weird.
it just a lot of it just looks flat and unlit and very strange.
Especially, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like there was an issue where my character's lips would like glow.
Yep.
With the light.
I
If you have
didn't
any,
see
Speaking
if you have a character that has like any of the lip makeup on, they like
Oh yeah,
shine.
super shiny.
And you can't turn it off.
the lighting, speaking of the lighting being kind of weird in some places, the lighting in the character creator is bizarre.
So
It doesn't
strange.
Oh
you
god.
look completely different in the character
Because
creator
it's dark.
compared to
You
I didn't
character
realize
creator
they
is like
have
a
the
dark
Black
green
Emporium
room.
after
Oh
the
neat.
fact.
Didn't realize my
I
nose
love
was
the Black
inverted.
Emporium.
The Black
Yeah,
Emporium.
you can change it later
basically-
if you don't
you
like
can
your
change it
character.
later.
Not
but,
at launch
yeah,
though.
Yeah, not
not at
That's
launch.
true.
to be fair.
That's true.
I
Um,
love the guy in the Black Emporium. I think he might be one of my favorite characters, and he's just like a guy who sits there.
He's very strange.
It's great.
Yeah,
He might be the
that's
strangest thing in that game too.
Yeah.
So real quick, we haven't actually talked about wait times.
Yeah.
On the Lord table. We keep getting
Oh,
distracted.
yeah.
Circling around that. Sorry.
Let's circle back to those wait times. You had to wait for the discussion, just like
Those
we had to wait to
hour-long
play the
wait
game.
Times.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there's like a weird mobile game quality to it.
Yeah, it almost feels like because this game does have multiplayer. It has like a co-op kind of
Which we
dungeon
did play,
crawling
and we
thing.
did not like.
No.
We had a-
Oh,
we
it
had a
was one of the
bad
worst
time.
gaming experiences I
Those
have
wait
ever had.
times
in
feel
recent
like they
memory.
wanted to bring those kind of loot boxes that they have in that multiplayer mode into single player in some way.
Oh.
And then they kind of started to backtrack is kind of what it feels like. I'm not entirely sure if that was their original intention or not.
I
But
really
otherwise,
don't
I don't know.
understand. Like, I can kind of see putting a limit on doing a bunch at one specific time, but they kind of already have that. Those things unlock at certain times
Yeah.
and under certain criteria. So why is it not just like you get back from a mission and there's new ones?
I wasn't
I wonder
bothered by the
if
wait
it's
times
wanted-
most of the time, but there's a problem. as you get further into the game, you start unlocking more missions that have wait times upwards of 3 hours. Like,
Yeah.
that kind of becomes your new default.
Oh God.
Which is just like a weird amount of time. Like that's not. I'm not going to be playing the game for more than 3 hours generally. Like I'm going to take a break at some point in there, then come back later.
Just don't look at me.
This is why I bring it up, because it's just like an awkward amount of time where it's like I don't. What is the intention here? Is it that I stay playing the game for 3 hours, or that I come back later tonight and check it out?
I think it's.
But then they have
I
a bunch.
don't think it's real time. I think it's game time.
It's real time, not game time.
Okay.
It is real time because there's a few that are 3 days that you get to.
What?
Yeah, there's a few that are 3
God.
days, and I was playing an Elven Inquisitor, and one of the Elven Inquisitors things is not. I would not consider this a spoil. It's very, very minor. You have a little side quest line on the war table that is about your clan, where it's like, oh, this is what your clan is doing. To progress that quest line, you have to make the right choice about which advisor to use repeatedly, which just use a wiki. Because the consequence for getting any one of these decisions wrong is your clan dies. And that doesn't actually matter. At no point does that ever come up in the game again, but you get a very sad letter that's like they're all dead.
And don't you feel like a piece of shit?
And don't you feel like a piece of shit?
Is it a different person that you have to use each time, or is it the
Yes.
same?
It's different. And
mean,
generally, you
sometimes
can
it's
use
the
two
same,
of
but,
them
like-
generally, and you just
Yeah.
don't want to use the third. But it's still just like, it's so weird, it's so specific. If you fail it, you're just done. Like, there's not a
Also, the
success
elves have
state with
enough
that.
going on. Like they've got enough shit they have to deal with.
There's just a lot of like weird stuff like that where I'm like, to get this right on a first playthrough would be insane. Because what are you doing? And then playing it again to do the war table quest right, I'm not gonna do.
Yeah. I think this is another thing where I think I'm in the minority again. I do genuinely enjoy the war table. I think it's like fun. I do think that the wait times are just too long though. Like
Yeah.
it kind of just ruins it. Like I really think it's a really cool concept and I do genuinely enjoy it. And there was one time where I installed a mod to just get rid of the wait time, so just like you'd finish a mission and then the next time you opened up the war table you could just do it and it would finish immediately. And I kind of felt like it took the fun out of it for me. Like I think
think
that
what it
there is
needed
merit to it.
is a way to access it without having to go back to Skyhold through multiple loading screens. I think like that to me is the bigger problem.
you
Is
could
I don't
check
actually
it in
mind.
camp.
Yeah, like I don't mind the wait times as much. I mind the 3-day wait times. I don't mind the 30-minute wait times are fine. What I also think is a problem is that you can't use advisors when they're on one of those wait times, which meant I accidentally sent a person on a 3-day mission. Now I can't recall them. There's no way to get them back.
Yeah.
And I can't do any of these other war table missions that are blocking things for me that I want to unlock because they need that person. So now I just can't do the game. Like I'm literally sitting here, if I don't want to lock myself out of a quest line, I'm sitting here not playing the game for a day to wait for the war table to come out, which I faced that decision. I was just like, I'm just going to play the game and willingly give up on this quest line because I cannot
BioWare
wait
said, "Go
2
play
days.
outside."
Yeah. I don't want to play outside. I want to play
Dinner,
Dragon Age.
That's where I just don't understand, like the half-hour length, the hour length, whatever. That makes enough sense. That's fine. Even like the 3-hour max. But
Yeah.
stuff that's like above 3 hours, or even
Stuff
at
that's
3
above
hours
3
feels-
hours or stuff that is below 15 minutes, I don't understand. Because that
Yeah,
means
and
I'm going to start it and I'm not going to leave my hub until it's done. And I'm just
I
going to
just
waste
don't
time.
understand the point, because like I've seen this kind of thing before in more like live service online games where they want to keep you coming back all
Mhm.
the time. This is an RPG. You're coming back for the story.
Yeah.
So what? I just am so curious what the design, why the
'Cause
rationalization.
what I
for
really
that
suspect
design
they
choice.
wanted was they did this in Mass Effect 3, which is having the war effort thing. I think war effort is a better version of the war table because it
Did
isn't
Mass
timing
Effect 3
based.
come out before or after this?
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it was way before. Mass Effect 3 was like 2011,
Oh
2012.
wow.
2012.
2012.
So they moved to this, and I don't know why. I think they wanted that same feeling, but it doesn't work as well in my mind. All right. That said, anything else completely non-spoiler before we want to move into our full spoiler discussion? And I want to just, before we move on, get everyone's like temperature check, because we're saying a lot of negative things or a lot of constructive criticisms because we're hoping this is better in Veilguard. But I at least still had a really good time playing Inquisition.
There is something we haven't talked about that I really loved, which is the crafting system. The crafting system,
the crafting system's fun.
Is a lot of fun. So you're going to find a lot of different materials all over different, different spots that you can go to, and you can bring them back and either modify whatever armor you do have with schematics that you find, or craft completely new armor and weapons. And what's cool is you basically pick like a blueprint to start with, and then depending on the material you use for the blade and the hilt and the handle or whatever, it like changes its different stats, or even changes its base damage or its
and stuff too.
Armor, its appearance
good.
and stuff. Super cool, and it made forging around for every little collectible plant or rock actually feel really rewarding.
I also want to say that I love the world building in this series. I think it's like
That's
my favorite fantasy world building out there. There's like just so much cool stuff just crammed in. Like the codexes are like, you could spend days just filling up the codexes and reading them. There's like so much information. Yeah, I've got that too. Yeah.
They're right there.
Yeah.
We've got comics, we've got RPGs.
I've got the book Varric writes in the second game.
One of the really cool things that a lot of people don't know, a lot of the books for the games were written by the game's writers. They're the same people. And I also want to point out something that a lot of people for Veilguard were like, oh, it's not the same BioWare. Most of the writing team is still there. Not all of them, but most of the team that was behind the older Dragon Age games is writing on Veilguard.
Yeah, like I think some of the most public-facing people are no longer there, but like the core is still there. It's still mostly the same people.
I don't always feel like losing a writer is the death of a game. I mean, it definitely can be, but there's already a lot of really, well, this could go either way, but there's already a lot of really deep established lore. If a good writer comes on, they can play off of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's always interesting. I feel like I've talked about this before, but it's always interesting when you have a series that's gone on for 3-4 entries or whatever, and how much do you change, how much do you not change, and how much is
the combat system every game.
How much do you want to keep of the original team, and how do you want to bring in new people that potentially have different takes on the same material? We never would have gotten Symphony of the Night if we hadn't made a massive leap from the other Castlevania games, for example. Like that's always the example I use. We wouldn't have the like crazy, I was talking about it last week, the Igarashi era of Castlevania games if we hadn't taken that massive leap into essentially a completely different genre altogether. One that it basically just made on its own.
I mean, it's such a major evolution, that game.
And so I'm always open to like having different people work on a franchise, or just having it be a different, like take on different forms over the years. You have to let something evolve and grow and change,
Yeah. All right. So are we mostly ready to move on to our spoilery talks? And talk about the story a bit and companions and stuff.
Do we want to talk about multiplayer at all, or do we just...
We did a whole video. If you want to know our thoughts on it, go watch that. I really don't want to waste any more of my breath on that.
You got our opinions live.
I didn't get to make that episode, and so I was going to ask, but it seems clear. I'll have to go watch that later.
So
I have actually been different if we had 4 people.
The short version is that if you really like playing as level 4 or lower in Inquisition for like 6 hours, go play that.
Say that's the worst part of the
Which
game.
is the worst part of the game.
Did.
Okay, so moving on. This is your warning. If you don't want spoilers about Inquisition, we're not spoiling Veilguard. None of us have played Veilguard. It's not out yet. So don't worry about Veilguard spoilers. If you don't want Inquisition spoilers,
everybody dies.
This is your time to leave. Man, come on, Alex. You just let everyone know.
No, that was my last Mass Effect playthrough.
Shepard shows up and it's
yeah, sorry, that was Mass Effect 2 you're thinking of. Okay. Let's move on. Officially, if you don't want the spoilers, leave now or forever hold your peace. Let's talk about Skyhold and getting to Skyhold. Because I think the game really shows its chops in the moments where you pick which way to go before Skyhold. And Alex, maybe this will make you want to play the game.
Maybe. I don't know. But play the game? Yes. Suffer through it? I don't know.
Pro tip, just whatever you're doing right now, just leave. The
Just
game
leave.
will progress
The game will just do.
if you
We'll just
leave.
move on.
What?
Go to a different area. Talk to the companions.
So, for anyone, I assume if at this point, if you're here, and you're not Alex, you've probably played 2 Skyhold at least, or know of the thing, or don't care. Every Dragon Age typically has a decision revolving around Templars and Mages. It's your moment where you kind of align yourself with one of the 2 groups. Some games it's a specific choice, like Origins and Inquisition, and in some games it's kind of more gradual over the course of it, like Dragon Age 2, you end up aligned with one or the other based on the decisions you make over the game. And Inquisition, I think actually, I like Inquisition's take on the differences between the 2 the best, because I actually felt like there were reasons to pick the Templars, whereas typically I think the Templars come off as so mustache twirlingly evil.
Yeah, they do.
I don't want to join them. Whereas like Cullen, one of the advisors in this game, is a character who in the first game tells you to like go kill all the mages in the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cullen's a lot better in Inquisition.
Cullen
Yeah,
grew.
In Origins, he's a little bit I
Kinda
He
mean,
chills out a
scary.
bit in 2, and he chills out a lot
Like-
more in Inquisition.
Yeah,
like
I played
crusadery in a bad way.
I played Inquisition first, and I romanced Cullen on my first playthrough, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's like really sweet. I kind of like this guy." And then I went back and played the old games, and I was like,
Uh-oh, I married a
"Oh
war
my
criminal.
God, yeah, exactly." It was
so
it was.
I also
no,
will
he's a
specify, because I
racist.
now I have to make a joke about that, but before I make the joke, I have to specify we are also, the one spoiler we will include for the ending of Inquisition here is that Veilguard has used a character in their marketing that lets us know some bits about the result. We're gonna talk about that character. If you're watching Veilguard trailers, you know it's Solus is the character, but we're gonna be talking about
The fact
what
that Veilguard
it means.
exists is just a giant spoiler for
Yeah, is a giant
Inquisition.
spoiler
Yeah,
for this
it
one
really
character.
is.
It's
So
even
we're gonna
less
talk
than
about.
it used to be because they renamed the game to be
Oh,
less
yeah.
of a spoiler.
Yeah.
It was a straight up, the name was a spoiler before, but now it's not. The whole premise of Inquisition is based off, or is of Veilguard is based off of Solus from Inquisition. And you said the whole marrying a war criminal line. You know, I gotta make the same thing. That's what I did.
But this one's ears were a little bit more pointy.
Yeah, these were a little bit more pointy, and that head was a bit more shiny. So-
I do feel like
Oh, that's what you meant by like a boiled egg.
Yeah.
I do feel like with Veilguard in mind, the Solus romance might be the most interesting route to take.
That's why I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
that this playthrough.
Yeah.
Is I knew that I wanted to build the most drama possible, and how to do that except for the character that you know has to leave at the end of the playthrough. So yeah, I think that was very fun. I
Also,
do in
didn't-
general think the romances are better handled in this game than they are in the other games.
Yeah.
I think
one
the
thing I really
romances in this
liked-
game are legitimately quite fun.
Yeah, they're very fun.
Yeah.
One thing I really like, and this is a thing Veilguard isn't doing to my knowledge, and I think I fully understand why. It's a thing that I also like, kind of missed out on in Baldur's Gate and wish they had done. Is I think there's a really good part about the game to the characters having preferences, and having their sort of sexualities written into their characters.
Yeah,
as
I
a
remember
thing.
early on in Baldur's Gate 3 when there was the bug where everyone was horny for your character from the get-go.
Yeah.
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 The only complaint that I have is that there is no way Cassandra should be straight. She's a bi queen. They
Yeah.
fucked me.
I think they shouldn't have been at. Every companion should not have been that, but I like that Solus is very specific and will only date you if you're
Yeah.
a female elf. I think that's funny
Yeah.
as hell. I really like that Dorian is gay and will not will
I
not
mean,
engage with
you
you
can take
otherwise.
one
I'm
look
sorry.
at
Are you saying
Dorian and know
Dorian is?
that. Yeah.
Are you saying Dorian is homosexual? I had no idea.
I just thought it was
maker.
French.
I mean, is Teventer France? I might I might follow.
I feel like it may be useful just for historians in the audience or in the call right now. BioWare was, I believe, the first, at least major game studio to have a gay character be romanceable in Star Wars: The Old Republic 2, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
There was a character who's lesbian, and I think I've heard that might even be a bug, but they ran with it.
I would have to look into that, but that's very funny. Yeah, I think all the romances are well handled in this one. I do hope we get more of it in Veilguard, because I think my one disappointment with the romance here is that you only get very few scenes.
Yeah.
Because I think what they want to do is let you dump or get broken up with by anyone up until the final mission, which is a weird choice. I sort of wish that wasn't the way they designed it.
I feel like a lot of games do that, and it often has like a real lull in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Otherwise,
you guys have
Templars and Mages. Tal, you got a thing?
Yeah. Really quick, I was just wondering if you guys have like a favorite romance you've done, if you've looked into it or done any like other playthroughs or anything.
I think Solus is good just for drama. I mean, the real answer is I like all of them, but I haven't done them all.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out of my way to try every single one of them.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot. I like Iron Bull from what I played of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I started a Blackwall romance that I can't remember. I just know that I liked Blackwall as a character a lot, so I might be.
Yeah.
I've started romancing Josephine in my current playthrough.
Oh,
I'm not
that
like
one's sweet.
Oh yes, I've done some of that.
That's what I did in my first playthrough. She's very, very sweet.
I thought it'd be interesting how like a romance in a game like this is handled when they're not in your party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was cool that they write that into it.
Like
Like that's part of the thing is that you have to consider that Josephine is not a combat character and won't be doing fighting. So
I like that it's an option because like usually it's reserved for party members, or I've played some games where there's like romances that are like 2 lines of dialogue and then you leave or something.
I do love that there's some characters where like you want to initiate a romance and they're like, no.
Yeah.
Vivian will always say no.
Vivian is hilarious. It's so funny.
If you play as a woman, you can romance Cassandra up to a certain point, and then she'll like very awkwardly tell you that she's actually straight and she likes you as a friend.
I wonder if that's almost so better. I always love that more than her.
Imagine being led on by an NPC.
That's very funny.
That's crazy. That's good writing right there.
Yeah. All right. I want to circle us back to Templars and Mages because this is the big choice that you make at the start that we can talk about. And the classical choice is always Mages. Mages are the good choice functionally in basically every game. With the exception, and I think there is Inquisition lets you make a case for helping the Templars that I think works better than any of the other games, which is you can do the Templar quest immediately without ever having access to the Mage quest, which is what I did, so that I didn't feel bad about not helping the mages. I never got their quest. I left it at go meet this person in a bar, and I just didn't do that. So I never actually received their quest, and instead just helped the Templars, and it was really fun.
There's nothing the church likes more than ignorant bliss.
Yep, and then I did go back and I did the other mission to make sure that I had done both, but I actually prefer the Templar mission. I think it's a cooler mission, and I think the results of it are more interesting. The Venatori are a cooler thing to fight.
Yeah, like I really like siding with the mages, like theoretically. Like I like, in terms of storytelling, I like siding with the mages because
usually play as a mage too.
Yeah, I play as a mage. I feel like the mages should be free from like my character's perspective. But so I did like the mage run the first few times I played the game, and then at some point I was like, you know what? I've played this game like 2 or 3 times the same exact way every time. I'm gonna try siding with the Templars, and I was like, this is like the mission is way cooler. The villain.
There's like a cool thing where you have to like time holding a hall while you like run out and go rescue people without the people in the hall getting massacred. It's a super cool mission.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then I feel like Calpurnia is a way more compelling like rival, then
Well, especially because Calpurnia, you can talk down. In classic Bioware
Yeah.
fashion, you can talk her out of fighting you, and she leaves and goes to help Teventer instead.
yeah,
Which is a fascinating way to handle a villain character, which I don't believe you can do on the Templar path.
yeah, and I don't think you even run into Calpurnia at all on the other
Yeah,
path.
you get Samson instead. So
Yeah,
I think to me the Templar path is really interesting. It exposes you to a lot of cool characters. I really like. This is one of the things. Is so there are I think 9 companions total in this game, and 2 of them you don't get until you make this choice. At which point you will get one of them earlier than the other. So if you choose Templars, you get Cole, who is a rogue assassin that is a spirit, who is maybe
He's
one of
got
my
a
favorite
big-ass
characters in
hat.
the game. He's got a rad hat. And it's just a fascinating
I've never
thing to exist in Dragon Age because he's a really cool like a lore thing of like what is a spirit doing in a human form, what's going on here, and there's a lot of like mysteries around that, and it makes him a really cool companion.
It's a lot of fun to listen to other characters try and figure out what he even is.
But
Yeah.
siding with the
Oh.
Templars, you get a lot more of him because he's the main character in that sort of run that is helping you through everything. And he's really interesting, and it makes you want to have him join your party a lot more because if you're doing the mage run and you just get Cole showing up in your party at one point, I think there's a lot of reasons that you just wouldn't let him be there.
yeah.
Because he's just a spirit with 2 knives that appears in front of you and says, "I'm not going to hurt you. Why would I do that?" When every other demon has done the exact opposite. Whereas if you do the Templar run, he like saved your life basically.
I do wonder, because I mean, I've never done I've never sided with the Templar and Inquisition. How does Solus react to you, like, kind of siding with the Templar?
He doesn't really care because, at least for me, I never gave him the option of siding with the mages.
Yeah,
He
I
never
don't
knew that
think
we were
he-
missing something.
I think he kind of just like sort of in the background approves or disapproves. I don't think it really changes what he says to you, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah,
But it's
every
been a
companion has
while.
some
He's
unique
got
dialogue
another
about
game
the
he has to
two.
be in.
But like Solus does not particularly care. Like none of the companions really care which one you do.
Yeah.
Your advisors care more. Like the
Solus-
advisors are the ones that'll push you to do one over the other.
Vivian cares.
Yeah, Vivian cares if you give her the option, but if you never give her the option, she doesn't care.
Oh my god,
That's the trick to doing the Templars.
Oh
You
my
just
god.
stay one step back from doing that quest.
Solus also is an elf, which is a little bit different as a mage, aren't they? I mean, like, aren't most of the mages that the Templars control?
Well, yes, but
So,
also
Solus is interesting.
no.
So if you play an elf as Solus, you get a bunch of unique dialogue.
Yeah.
Even if you aren't romancing him. So
Yeah, that's
one
what
of the things is that Solus is not like he is not a city elf. He's not a Dalish elf. He is a apostate elf who has basically been journeying outside of either of the two. And he tells you that he's like studied all these places in the Fade and knows all these things because of his studying them. And basically will like tell you a bunch of stuff about elven history and be like, well, I don't think the Dalish are actually that cool because they're kind of bastardizing what the history was. And you get
There's-
more into that further in the game, but that's the gist of his thing is like he doesn't actually really align with any of the others.
There's a really funny bit of dialogue where if you talk to him about the Dalish mages, so there's a lot of history about the Dalish and
They're
Elvish
big in
history. It's
origins
really
and stuff,
cool.
too.
But basically the Dalish are reconstructing their past, and so they have all these like traditions that they're sort of reconstructing from dead
what their
traditions.
keepers remember, basically.
Yeah. And Solus spends all this time in the Fade, and there's a funny dialogue where he'll like be like, "Well, I tried to go tell the mages how things really were, and they kicked me out."
Yep.
It's really funny.
Yep.
But my
it's
point
very
to bring that
interesting.
up is that Solus is kind of unique in that he is outside of almost any other faction in the
Yeah.
game. So
Yeah.
his reaction, I mean, like, it can somewhat justify a lesser reaction than like some of the human mages would have. and
He's
whatnot.
above all that nonsense. He's got other things to worry about.
He's got the 4th game to be in.
And a whole ass DLC.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's one of the strengths of the game start showing when you get to the point where you're picking one of those two missions. And the mage one is really cool too, because the general thing is each of these missions has like a thing, like a specific thing going on. The Templar one is you basically get to explore inside your own head as an envy demon is fighting you. And you're basically having like a mental battle throughout the whole thing, like analyzing what would happen if the Inquisition went bad, which is very interesting. And then on the mage side, you get to see the actual future if the Inquisition fully fails, and you basically aren't there. And it's bad. It's not good.
I like how some of these games get a little bit high concept with that at time when it deals with like the magic and the fade and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In general, I think that's a real
so
strength.
Cool,
because it seems like that Veilguard's going to deal with the fade quite a lot. So, yeah, I think that's where the game really shows.
And it keeps that momentum too, because the attack on Haven is also super exciting.
Yes.
It's this like big kind of set piece moment, and then even the like quiet like somber moments in between leaving Haven and getting to Skyhold is a lot of fun. Man, when everyone starts singing the Dawn,
that's the scene.
Gives me like shivers.
That is
every
the
time.
scene. So it's where after you leave Haven and are trying to find Skyhold, everyone thinks the Inquisitor is probably dead. Having like you went off to stop this thing on your own and you succeed, but at the same time, like everyone kind of knew you were probably gonna die in the process. But you manage to not, and you get back, and like at the start of the game, people start calling you the Herald of Andraste as a thing, and it's really up to you whether or not you embrace that or not. Where it's like you can choose if your character is faithful as to the Andrastian faith, or you can be like, I was an elf and I was like, I believe in the elven gods, not the Andraste and the church as like divine figures.
It would basically be like the Catholic Church being like, you are like the second coming or something.
Yes, and it's really interesting because your companions and your advisors all have unique things to say about it, and will like push you in one direction or another. Or like at the start, a lot of them do believe that you might be a like divine figure before you eventually find out that you aren't, and it's just a magic thing that happened by chance.
And what I do like too is that they allow you. It doesn't like. I don't think it's as fleshed out as either accepting it or rejecting it, but they do allow you to like have kind of more complicated feelings of like, I don't know how I feel about this, like especially if you're an elf.
That's how I've been playing my characters for. I'm just like, bad things are happening to me. I want to close the giant hole in the sky.
It's almost this thing of like I'm an elf. I believe in the elven gods, but I also can't ignore what's happening. Like
and it's also Andraste is a historical figure. Like Andraste is not like a person that is made up. Andraste was a person in lore. It's just whether or not the maker is real. That's really the question. So it gets into all this really fascinating kind of allegory to real world religion, which I love. I think it's super cool. I think the ways in which you can make your own decision about that are really interesting, and that even once you learn it is a magic thing, they present to you as the option like, hey, maybe you weren't like specifically given a divine gift, but why else would you have wound up here? Like you could do the classic luck angle as like the fact that you were in that situation to begin with means you were chosen and not. And it's very fascinating because it kind of has implications as you go, whether or not you're pushing for being like a divine force or being a like human force that is like there to stop a problem.
I feel like it kind of challenges the player and who they're trying to role play a little bit more than some other BioWare games that I've played, which I find very interesting.
I do really like a lot of the sort of role play potential in this game.
Yeah.
I feel like
I think it's great
a lot of
because I assume all of us have seen like one of the criticisms that's being levied at Veilguard from early reviews is that you can't really be a villain. And the same is true in Inquisition. I mean, the same is true in all the games, really. Origins is the most leeway, and 2
you can
has
be a dick, but you're not like a villain.
2, you wind up complicit in villainy, whether or not you want to or not.
Prime.
But like, I think Inquisition shows that there's a lot of wiggle room even within that strict barrier of like you are a hero. It gives you a lot of ways to interpret that, which I think is a really cool way to play with it and not restrict you to one side or another.
But it is understandable if someone who's a huge fan of Origins is frustrated that it seems like the kind of role that you can play feels like it's kind of being narrowed, like
Yeah.
being more narrowed and narrowed as like time goes on, which I totally understand. For me, it's like I never find playing a villain or playing a dickhead in these types of games to be all that interesting to me. It just doesn't do much for me.
Yeah.
So it's something that doesn't bother me, but I totally understand like
Yeah. Because
other people
what I
not
find interesting
having
is
that
playing
option.
characters that are really practical, where they're like, I will solve this problem in the way that makes the most sense at this immediate moment without additional information, which is usually how you solve a problem without killing people in Dragon Age, is you get extra information, and I think that tends to make for more interesting characters, because you wind up in situations like Mass Effect tended to do this pretty well in one, but not so much in the others, where you got to make decisions that are harsh but not evil. And Inquisition has a few moments like that where you can like pass judgment on people while you're in Skyhold and like decide things. There's some companion stuff that gets really interesting, which we got to talk about the companions too. But in general, I think Inquisition does a good job of navigating those decisions. Which it
I
makes
always
me wish it
find-
was easier to replay and not need to do all this extra stuff.
I always find it like the most intriguing when I'm trying to be a good person, but those good morals are challenged constantly because you have to make practical decisions. And it's like I have a very strong set of like morals, but they're being challenged all the time, which I've just always found more interesting. And when they limit your role play in a way where you still have to be like the protagonist, like a good person, I feel like they can explore trying to challenge your like paragon morals a lot more.
Yeah,
when they
which
don't
I'll
have
actually
to
say
worry
that was
about
my
a
favorite part
metagame.
of Dragon Age 2. Is Dragon Age 2 like you're constantly navigating the conflict between mages and Templars, and as a person you tend to want to help the mages because they're the oppressed people here, but at the same time the mages keep doing things that make things worse.
They're
where
oppressed and you want to help them, but also Anders.
but also blood magic. But then the problem circles back around to like, well, they're only doing that because they keep getting pushed by this other group of people into further and further problems, and it's like it's a cyclical thing where you can't say that one of them is distinctly at fault. It's more moving through that web of things going on. Yeah, I think that was where the series was at its most interesting, and I hope Veilguard gets some of those splits back. And from what I've heard, it seems like there might be at least one of them that's like a meaningful split decision, but we'll see.
To go back ever so slightly, with the criticism I've seen ahead of time about how Veilguard is looking, it makes me realize there's a surprising amount of people that their favorite game in the series is Origins.
I'm one of those people.
I don't disagree. I think
Yeah.
it might be my favorite I haven't played 2, but it's a really good game. But I'm kind of surprised that this is a lot of the criticism I've seen leveled at Veilguard kind of goes back to Origins, and I think is more criticism of like the direction of the series as a whole.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely true.
Which I still really like a lot of the series. I'm hoping that Veilguard continues that.
I do think there's a lot of people that are stuck with Origins, if that makes sense. They're kind of stuck in that headspace. Not that I don't understand, again, but I go back again to the idea of like these things change, and it's not always necessarily a bad thing. And I think it's good to let these like beloved long running franchises kind of experiment and stretch its toes a little bit.
Especially in regards to sorry, I'm derailing us a bit here, but especially in regards to like some of the art style critique, I don't think that Origins looks bad.
Yeah.
But it looks a lot less unique, a lot less memorable than a lot of the art style.
I would say
choices in the
Origins
later
looks
games.
kind of bad now.
I don't like how long the arms on the dwarves are in Origins.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
a lot
also
of people
talk about
forget
how-
how weird Origins looks.
Can we also talk about how everyone walks around like they just crapped their pants?
Yeah, I was about to say
Oh,
that.
boy.
The moment you said they walked around, I was
Oh
like,
my god!
it's-
Yeah, what's
There's just-
some?
there's
it's the
like-
Trump walk.
Oh my god! What's some? Who's the black-haired lady who like rescues you at first? What's her name?
Cassandra.
Is it-
Morgan.
Morgan?
Or Morgan. What part of the game is this, Alex?
Like the witch lady?
What are we
Oh
talking
no,
about?
in
we talking-
not Origins, in
Inquisition?
in Inquisition, yeah.
Cassandra?
Oh,
Cassandra.
Cassandra.
Yeah, in one of the beginning cutscenes when it's her marching like down the soldier thing after you come back from finally,
Oh
meeting
yeah.
that first rifty, it looks like everyone has shit in their pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
It's
play
like,
as an elf,
that's
so
ugh.
the animations for the hero of not the hero of Rome, that's the other game, for the Inquisitor, the animations for the Inquisitor are like just so, posture
I think they are
bad.
built for the human male. Like I think that's what
Yeah.
they were made for. And if you're an elf, little elf female, even if you're a warrior, you have this weird
Yeah.
stance where you're like walking
Yeah,
like
you're
that the whole
literally
time.
like hunched
Your
over
arms
with
are like
your arms
pulled
forward.
out to the side. All the time. It
It's
looks
bizarre.
really funny.
I think that like the elves in these games have a kind of a slightly off-putting design. They're very, very lithe and thin, more
like
than like any human would be. And I
Yeah,
kind of like
it sets
that,
them off.
but I always get an off-putting feeling, and I think half of that is the fact that the rig is just not
It's the
right.
same. They use the same rig, so it
My
definitely
hot
doesn't
take
look right.
about the elves is that they actually, with a lot of character designs, I think Dragon Age 2 was the peak of character design in like the
I agree
Dragon
with
Age
you.
series.
I think
the
you're right.
elves
From what
looked
I've
really
seen,
cool. I think the Kunari looked really cool. I think
Akari
it
looks
was like
rad.
they looked cool as hell. I think
They look rugged.
Inquisition kind of like took a step back from that because they were like it just I don't know. I get that
I
the
think that
Kunari were like
Inquisition-
more human to fit the animations and facial animations and stuff, but yeah, I think it was a step backwards.
Yeah, I think Inquisition, though it still has a lot of stylization, took more of a like realistic
Yeah.
approach to some of the character designs.
I am curious. We mentioned art style here. What's everyone's take on the Veilguard art style? Because personally, I actually like it. I don't know if I'll
keep
love the
forgetting what it
character.
looks
With the
like.
exception of the Kunari, I'm totally fine with
I
it.
agree
not
with
sure
you.
I've
The
seen the
Kunari are
Kunari.
weird, and I don't
They
like
look-
that they look like that.
Awful.
Okay.
They look
Going to
terrible.
You seen the Canary?
Some of them look okay, but people have
It
shown that you can
reminds
make a
me-
good-looking Kunari character, but the default looks terrible.
It
Yeah.
There's
reminds
a
me
lot of
it,
there's a lot of really rough looking Canary
Oh.
in
it reminds me of when you finally saw Tali's face in Mass Effect 3, and it looked like they just photoshopped a woman's face on like
Yeah.
a generic alien
My
head,
God.
and I was like,
some of these
That's
Canary
it?
have like 5 heads.
Don't show it to me.
I
I
think
never want to
that
see it.
the I think that the like pre-made Kunari character, like the side character, I think she looks fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Sorry, am I
Tosh
allowed
looks
to swear?
rad. Yes, you're allowed to swear.
yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Yeah, you're fine.
She looks awesome, and then you get to like the player models that they're showing, and it looks bad.
I'm betting is like she was able to have a bespoke rig or something, and
Yeah.
the
There
characters
is-
can't have one. But
There's a problem in Inquisition too that it looks like has somehow only gotten worse with these player character models I've seen, where like the Canary hair just isn't good.
Yeah.
As far as I saw, there was 2 options. A third being bald, at least for male Canary.
Every player character Canary here I see. Now, obviously, the game hasn't come out yet, so I'd love to play around in the character creator. But a lot of them have like severe 5 head.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
I
really
will
like
say
an
I
8 head.
I saw a couple
They
of
have before head, forehead, and after head.
See,
saw a couple of reviews
I'm
make
okay
Canary
with
that
5
look
head if
okay,
it's like
but-
okay, like the horns are a big part of the brow going up, and it's like the horn.
It's
design
too
thing.
smooth from what
Yeah,
I'm
it's
seeing.
it's just flesh.
I'd love to see more in game though, because it's Origins. The Canary look like big gray humans.
Yeah, these ones kind of look a little bit mega mindy.
Yeah, they
All right.
do.
Well, on that note, let's refocus in on Inquisition for a second.
and some Squidward looking ass.
Because we started talking about Veilguard companions. I think it's only fair we start talking about Inquisition companions.
Yeah.
Because I like the gang in Inquisition with a couple exceptions. I don't think it's the strongest bunch of companions. I think Origins has the overall group of
You can get a
companions. that I
dog
like
in
the
Origins.
most.
That's all you gotta say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You big dog.
Though I am partial to Varric. Varric will always be my favorite companion no
I
matter
love
what.
Varric.
He's the best. He's the
The
best.
fact that he's not romanceable is a crime.
I'm okay
Yeah.
with it in the scenario because he is your ride or die all the time. Varric will do
Yeah,
everything
that's
with
fair.
you. And like ever since playing with Dragon Age 2, I was like at every expectation you're like, when is Varric gonna screw me over? And he never does and is just your best friend. Like I can never be mean to this person.
He's
I can
like the
never not take
slimiest
you.
guy who just never is slimy.
Yeah.
He's just the best person.
He's got
I'm
that
so-
grease, but he's very clean about it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to see him returning in the new game.
Yeah. I like his new design, but I also don't like it at the same time. But
Does
I'll
he
keep
have
it to
his chest hair
Inquisition.
out?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh,
yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's perfect. Keep it that way.
Because I like to preface for Alex, if you didn't know, there's a 10-year time skip between Inquisition and
I
Veilguard.
didn't realize it was that
Oh,
big.
10 years.
Yeah,
wow.
it's big.
Well, that's
It's a
real
chunky time skip.
And somehow he's gone from a strawberry blonde to black hair.
What?
He's a bit more of a dilf.
Yeah, he looks very
he's
dilfy.
gray.
but-
He's gray in a little bit. I think it's the lighting makes him look like he has black hair.
Yeah, well, there's a lot that I'm like, we've only seen a little bit, so I'm very curious to see what it looks like in real game.
Yeah.
Varric
So
is-
I gotta
he's
ask.
he's a lot like if you just have Garrus as your like best friend in Mass
Totally.
Effect.
Like absolutely, it's like Garrus was always with me regardless if I was romancing or not because he's the ride or die.
Yeah.
And I will always go for a companion that is just a ride or die.
I kind of feel like, in my memory of playing the game, there's only a couple times that I chose not to have Varric in my party.
Yeah, I the only
I
times
just
I ever
like-
chose not to have Varric was if I was taking Cole or Sarah for a reason, and I generally didn't want to have Sarah in the party, and I did like Cole a lot, but Cole is useless in scenarios where you're fighting things that need range. So, which yeah, getting to companions, I generally like the Inquisition gang, and even the ones that I don't like, I appreciate their presence and like why they're there, because I think a lot of people really hate Sarah. I like that Sarah is a character because she represents a type of character that you don't get to see very often, even if I don't want to see that character very often.
Yeah.
That's how I'd
I
put
feel like
it.
there's something to there being like not every companion being instantly likable.
Yeah, totally.
And like,
Plus, it's cool to like pick the brain of someone who's part of Red Jenny and like kind
yeah.
of figure out how their whole
And Sarah can be,
situation
if you take her with you, sometimes she is hilarious. Where she'll like,
Oh, take her out
her
with Blackwall.
dialogue.
They're hilarious together.
yep. I had a lot of good combos. I like taking Solus and Cole because they have a lot of fun interactions. I like taking Varric and anybody, but especially Cassandra because he
Oh,
pesters her
God.
all the time.
Oh my god, I lost it when he was like, I spy with it. No.
And I think
Oh,
like
no.
my like game finishing party was usually Iron Bull, Dorian, and Varric, which is a hilarious set. They
Oh, yeah.
they
Those
feed
are-
each other so well.
That's awesome.
It's really fun to take Solus, Varric, and Cole out because it's almost like a divorced couple fighting over their child.
So funny.
One of my
Yeah.
favorite because I'm only a certain ways into the game, so I'm not super into a lot of the like companion missions yet. But one moment that I loved is right after you get to Skyhold, you talk to Iron Bull, and he dresses you up as a soldier just to see how, just to
That's
like
one of my
sit you
favorite
down
scenes in the game.
with some of the Inquisition soldiers, just to like hang out with them where there's no like power difference between the two of you, and that's probably been one of my favorite like just companion moments.
Yeah.
Iron Bull is like a real standout for me.
He's great.
For the
Yeah,
most
I
part.
think I had a couple standouts. Actually, I would say less that I had standouts and more that I had stand downs of like, there's a couple companions that didn't really get the full treatment in terms of quest. And surprisingly, I think Varric is almost one of them, where he doesn't really have
Yeah.
that crazy of a side quest.
I think he's had
Vivian
so much to do
is
in
really
other
simple.
games. I think it is okay though.
Yeah, which is why I don't have a problem with it with Varric, because like what he has is
Plus,
cool and it's
Varric,
relatively
like,
minor.
starts the game with you.
Yeah,
Where
so he's like
some of
there
the
the
other
whole time.
companions you meet later and are a bit more introduced to them through the.
And I
the
think it's a
side
case of
quests.
just like a lot of the companion side quests are just fetch stuff, and those are really just for you to gain approval. They're not really there for you to actually do anything.
Yeah, it's disappointing that Varric's like beginning mission is just find some red
Is
lyrium.
So the
approval-
reason those
is-
missions exist is for you to fix your approval if they hate you, and you want
Is
to
Okay.
get back
approval
up.
for
Okay.
anything
Well,
besides
how
romance?
does Varric hate
Yes,
you?
approval
they
changes
will
their dialogue.
Yeah, and they'll leave if they don't approve of.
Oh.
You have to make
How do
them
you-
really hate you to leave. Like I pissed off Cassandra a lot, and she never left.
Okay,
do
so
you
there's
feel
3
about-
that will never leave. Varric, Cassandra, and Solus will never leave, no matter what you do. But everyone else has a chance to leave if they disapprove enough.
I do
actually-
wonder. I'm curious to get your guys' take on this because in almost every other BioWare game, there's a whole separate screen where you can look at how your like relationship status basically with all of your various
I
companions.
kind of feel like
and they
Inquisition
don't
needed
have that
something like
here.
that.
They
Yeah.
don't have it here. The only way you can really gauge it is how they speak to you when you first interact with them, which kind of
which is
you can
also
use as a
inconsistent
gauge.
because they
Is
Yeah.
there anything? Because I don't remember the last time I've seen any Veilguard promotional material or stuff because it just hasn't been in my
Mhm.
like, media bubble. Is there any chance of like an active time lore table or map that we could?
I
look
don't think
through?
specifically that, but there's definitely going to be codex stuff and like lore
Yeah.
tabs and whatnot. But yeah, I think in general there's a really strong set of companions here. One that I really like, and I understand a lot of people don't like Blackwall. I really like
Oh, he's
Blackwall.
great.
I love.
I think my
Because-
problem with Blackwall is that he's not immediately interesting right off the bat.
That's
At
true.
least for me, there's like nothing
I
that
thought he
really like,
was.
piques my interest just yet. I want to explore his character more because I did like some of the dialogue.
Yeah,
after
so
we
I
get to
won't
meet
say
him.
what his companion quest is because I don't want to spoil it for you, Wyatt. But he has my favorite companion quest, and it's
Wyatt, have
still it's very simple. It is like a simple like choice based one, but it's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Wyatt,
I'm
have
saying
you
nothing else
played,
about it because I don't want to spoil it. But
Yeah, I would say it's one of the stronger companion quests.
Why had you played Origins before Inquisition?
Yeah, it's been a minute, but I have. Yeah.
Okay, because I found like I do kind of agree that like his very initial meeting is a little bit. I don't know. There's not a huge hook there,
Mhm.
but I feel like the hook for me was like, oh, I had played Origin, and I was like, oh, hey, look, another Grey Warden.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
whenever I
think
hear
that's
Grey
probably why
Warden, I
he's
get
not-
interested.
Yeah, I think that's probably why his hook isn't as like big as the others. Because if you've played the other games, you're gonna be like, oh, a
Grey Warden is enough of a hook to
Yeah.
get you interested.
Maybe
He's
it's
also just
because
a
it's been
more
so long.
light-spoken companion.
Maybe it's because it's just been so long since I played Origin, so maybe it wasn't enough of a hook for me. I have a terrible memory. Just
Oh, that's fair.
like,
There's a lot
it
of
goes in
lore
one ear
going
and out
on
the
too.
other. But I do want to like because what piqued my interest was like the conversation I had with him after after getting to Skyhole, where I'm trying to remember. The conversation was like, yeah, we lost a lot of people, and he's like ready to like avenge all the people that died in
Yep.
Haven. And then I was like, hey, but I need you alive, you know, like I can't have you just running out there and like you know dying immediately. And he was like, well, hey, someone has to do something around here. we can't just like
Mhm.
we can't just sit around with our thumbs up our asses, basically. And I was like, oh, okay.
I got some respect for you now, bud.
Part this a little bit. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So going, it sort of like it also sort of goes together with his companion quest, but romancing him is really interesting, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, he
Okay.
would have been my second choice had I not committed to the Solus, because he's fascinating.
Yeah.
I also think the only companion that didn't have a lot going on for me was Vivian. I think Vivian, just in general, is a little bit underbaked because her
don't like
companion
Vivian.
quest. I like her characterization because I don't like her, and I don't like
Yeah.
her for
No,
reasons
exactly.
that I like, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
I don't
Yeah.
like her for the exact reasons that the writers don't want you to like her,
Yeah,
which makes her very effective.
Which actually
Yeah.
made me
Yeah.
like her at the end when she's like, "I respect you as a person," and I'm like, "I respect you too, Vivian." I'm glad we can mutually respect each other without being friends.
It's always annoying whenever I like make a decision that I'm like I feel good about that, and then Vivian greatly disapproves.
Yeah.
It's also really
I
funny.
Shut up,
She really mellows out in Trespasser. Like, she really chills
There's
out.
so many times where I was just like, "Shut up, Vivian! No one wants your opinion. Just shut up."
When I played my Templar run through, So I always play a mage. Like I've tried the other classes and I just don't like them as much. So I pretty much only play mage. So I was playing a mage who was in support of the circle and sided with the Templars, which is exactly who Vivian is.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
she still did not like me. And I was like,
I think she just by
Aw.
default
What am I
doesn't
doing
like you at the
wrong?
start.
Yeah.
What an asshole.
I think it's just who she is. Yeah, in general, I think all the companions are good. Dorian, I also think, is a real standout. I do think, I think that the fact that they focused a lot of the companion things, because I find that a lot of my favorite companions are the ones with relatively simple companion quests that are just focused on dialogue. Whereas like Dorian's companion quest is very simple, and it's about him and his father is like the gist of it. And there's not like stakes to this really. It's mostly just about him confronting his family relationships. And it's fascinating because it's relatable. Like it's a problem that I think a lot of people will have because you're in a magical world, and yet Dorian's conflict with his father is that he sleeps with men.
Yeah.
And like that's the problem, according to his father. And I think it's such a relatable thing to.
A good BioWare companion quest is it should be you playing therapist.
Yeah, totally. Which a lot of them are.
My party pick is okay. I'm going to fix you people.
So what I'm hoping
but I
for
can fix you.
Veilguard, because from what I've heard with Veilguard is it seems like companions have actually been given like actual quest lines this time around, unlike Inquisition where they
I've heard
really only
they're
have one
very
mention.
substantial this time.
It's
Yeah,
time
which
for-
I
has
kinda
me
like that.
extremely
I-
interested.
I think that some of the strongest parts of Inquisition that I have played, and some of the other game Origins as well, though maybe less so, are the companion
Mhm.
interactions and companion. It's what I find personally, at least, probably most exciting, most interesting about Inquisition. So if they expanded upon that, I think that could be a really good
Well, 'cause
idea.
my thing
Yeah.
is like having played all the Mass Effect games, I think in general Dragon Age in every single game, Origins is maybe the most advanced with like companion quests, but in general, none of the Dragon Age games go as deep as Mass Effect does with like loyalty missions or companion quests.
There's something about, and it's the reason I prefer Mass Effect. There's something that just feels more personal about it.
Yeah.
It's there's something about, and maybe it's just my own personal taste because I prefer protagonists that actually speak. I always find it more distracting when my character doesn't talk versus when they do, which I know
Yeah.
is not normally, that's not the point, but like it's always distracting me because I hate how it affects dialogue. But there's just something about Mass Effect's characters I'll like never forget. Whereas with like Dragon Age, I'm like, I like them. They're starting to go a little bit, but I still like them.
Mhm.
And I feel like as we've gone on in Dragon Age, I feel like I'm beginning to have a deeper connection with these people like I did in Mass Effect. And maybe it's
Yeah.
again because Hawk speaks or the Inquisitor speaks, but I
Which
just
is
I
interesting
feel
because like
much more
Dragon
attached
Age
to them.
games tend to be longer, so you have more time with them outside of companion missions, which I think does do a lot. Like I prefer Dragon Age's companion banter to Mass Effect's in most scenarios. I think they get a lot more detailed, and
I think the other thing for me is you're dealing with a lot of the same characters through all three Mass
Yes.
Effect games, which I think there's a lot of merit to the way that Dragon Age does its stories as well. It kind of feels like a mythology being told, right? Which is
it's more
really
about the world and
interesting.
the setting than it is
It's
a
more
protagonist.
interesting in some regards, but like it's Mass Effect is more about that
Yeah,
kind of
which is odd because
forecast.
Inquisition is the one where you do play more of a Mass Effect-y role as the Inquisitor, where it's like at the start you have an ending point. You're like, we're gonna beat the Rift, and then we're gonna beat Corypheus. Is like your two goals.
There's a
The
war
problem-
effort going on.
Yeah, there's a war effort,
know?
and like I like that the DLC for Inquisition is you confronting the reality of like, okay, what do we do afterwards? Like, what's the thing after it? Do we still have a mission? I think it's just really interesting. I do think Corypheus is the weakest Dragon Age villain to me, because he's
Yeah.
the thing with Corypheus, and this is like a minor spoiler, I guess, for Dragon Age. Spoilers, you beat the villain. Like, I guess is the thing.
Wow.
Nobody's gonna be surprised by that. The thing with Corypheus and Inquisition in particular is I actually think Inquisition's story missions have a weird flow to them where you have really, really good at the start. Like Templars and Mages quests are great. After that, you have Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts, I think it's called, and then Here Lies the Abyss. Here Lies the Abyss is cool as hell, where you get to see some Dragon Age 2 characters again, potentially some Dragon Age 1 characters again. I get to do a lot of really fun stuff with them.
That was crazy. I was not expecting. I don't know if we want to name drop anyone here.
Oh, we can name drop. I won't say like what happens, but
I didn't think I'd hear anything from Logain ever again, and yet here he.
I'm glad that you were joining me as a fellow. I always force it so Logain survives because I want his ass to be in the Grey Wardens.
Get your ass over there, young man.
So the interesting thing with that I'll specify with that quest is you can have one of 3 people be the Grey Warden that shows up, which it's either Logain, if you had the scenario where Logain survives Origins, or it's Alistair if Alistair becomes stays a Grey Warden, which is really cool. You get to see Alistair again. Right.
Alistair, my beloved.
Which love that scenario, but I'm never not going to make Alistair king. So that never happens.
It feels wrong.
It feels dirty to me. Or it's Stroud from Dragon Age 2 if Logain is dead and Alistair is king without Logain being around. So there's like an interesting lore character for every scenario that you can have, which I really like. Because that mission is super replayable because of that if you set up a different world state. And of course Hawk is rad. That's it.
See, I think I mentioned before, Inquisition was my first entry into the Dragon Age game, and I don't want to spoil too much. There's part of that mission is like there's a lot of like weight to it, and it's like portrayed with like this like all this gravity of
you don't know who the characters
mission.
are,
and I was like, I don't know who the hell these people are. Like, why do I care about this?
Yeah, part of me, I think that the sound of Veilguard not having very much carries over is a little sad.
Yeah.
But part of me also is like, okay, well, hopefully that just means that like, well, first off, I'm sure that stuff is going to connect up no matter what. And I'm hoping
we'll talk about that
just
in a few minutes.
A little more approachable for a new, like, I don't want to get too into referencing games that are becoming harder and harder to play, basically.
Yeah, I generally agree, but my point with bringing those missions up is that like Here Lies the Abyss is really good. Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts I think can vary. Like it's an interesting mission, but it's kind of annoying to actually play through. Because in order to do it right, you have to do very specific things under timers and make sure things are like to get an outcome that you want. You have to follow really specific steps generally. And it's just a weird, really odd thing.
There is something that is kind of annoying because I'm in that kind of section right now with those 2 missions. It's fun to go out and explore like a new location, but you're there if you're just kind of following the story and you're not really doing a lot of the side content. You go to this new area, you like talk to Scout Harding, and you get this whole lay of the land and everything, and you're figuring out what's going on. And then you go talk to someone for like 5 minutes, and then you're back to the war table and off to another spot again. I kind of wish.
Stop exploring. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
But I wish like you have these like mostly gorgeous looking areas. I wish the missions that you went on utilized the areas more rather than being there for 5 minutes and then moving on and then moving on. But right here it's still happening, and it's kind of like,
I agree.
Why am I here? Like I'm in this, I'm here for 5 seconds and then I have to go all the way back.
This is like the weird thing with Inquisition,
another area again.
Is it does that with all of its story missions where you don't really do the world thing, you kind of do the war table thing, and then you're in the mission.
Yeah, I find that pretty weird about this game, and I'm not sure I really like it, that, like, the level setup is such that you're given this kind of odd, like, okay, go here and do a thing, and then you're just, like, there.
Yeah, you're just
directionless. You can, like, maybe pick up some side quests, maybe not.
Looking for shards.
But it's also like you're doing a thing. Then, like, you got a goal to do. I built a war plan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then I leave,
and maybe I come back later, or maybe not.
Which some of it you can kind of excuse away with like, oh, I'm doing these things to kind of build up the Inquisition. But that
sure,
like that like mental excuse only works so far until you're like, what am I doing?
And I'll also
I'm
specify,
just
like, it is good to, in my mind, it made it better to basically, like, whenever I got a story mission, I would try to play it as soon as I could, because the only things that lock off with story missions are generally companion quests, but you also need story mission progress to trigger companion quests. Like, you can't even do any of the final companion quests until you beat both Here Lies the Abyss and Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts. So you need to be both of those to get the final stage of your companion stuff. And you will hit points in the final bit of story things will ask you to spend power to unlock the mission. So that's kind of your clue to, like, okay, you can do some open world stuff now. Like, go do the side quests, go do the things that give you power, so you can build up to unlocking this, like, 40 power mission or something.
There's a couple of, like, side, like, not main mission areas, I think, at least as far as I've found so far, that I've been to, that I do, like, start to really get to this, like, wait a minute, aren't we in a war? Isn't there urgency? Aren't I, whether I want to be or not, potentially, like, the next prophet? Like, why am I out here in the damn sand looking
Finding
for shards
someone's
or
lost
something?
sheep. Like,
Oh, actually, I love the Lost Sheep quest. I think
I
that was
actually
really
do like the
fun.
lost sheep quest, but you can also do that before things are too crazy. So,
Yeah.
How many times have we told you we're starving? We need ram meat.
but yeah, back to the point I was trying to make ages ago about Here Lies the Abyss and Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts is I think there is a point after that where with those two quests, you almost solve the Corypheus problem during those two.
Yeah.
Which is super weird because there's still like 4 more story missions, but most of them are just not as urgent because you're instead doing the only thing left is to actually go fight the dude. And it's really weird that it kind of like loses a lot of pacing at that point. That said, like, they're still really fun. They're still good missions. And I think the like finale of Inquisition is a lot of fun. And in particular, Trespasser, I think, is the single best piece of Dragon Age content that we have. Like,
Yeah. It should have
Trespasser
been-
is really, really good.
I get that it like was planned to be later than the game, but it should have just been part of the game. It shouldn't have been
Well,
DLC.
it's specifically why there's going to be no story DLC for Veilguard.
Yeah, they're specifying for
whatsoever.
Veilguard,
They
they're not doing
specifically
that.
said, like, we don't want a trespasser
I
situation.
think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that said,
I don't
I
know
do
if
think the
any of you-
DLCs are really good. Jaws of Hakan is the one that I like the least because it's basically another Hinterlands, but it does have the benefit of you're doing a story quest and you're exploring the zone as you do the story quest the whole time.
Yeah.
And like actually playing the game, which is fun. I really like the Descent because you get to like go explore the deep roads with a Legion of the Dead soldier who, for you non-Dragon Age
That
lore
sounds
nerds,
cool as shit.
is
Yeah.
a dwarf that is basically the dwarf equivalent of a Grey Warden, who they say when you join the Legion of the Dead, you legally sign your funeral and like have a funeral when you start because you're
It's
gonna go
hardcore.
fight Darkspawn
It is
until you die,
hardcore.
and it's rad as hell. And
sounds
like
kinda like-
adventuring with the Legion is awesome.
That almost
So-
sounds like if anybody's a Warhammer fantasy nerd, it kind of reminds me of like the Slayers. which are a
Totally,
dwarven
yeah.
role that are
Absolutely.
just like you've been dishonored. Go fight until you die.
Yeah, it's interesting things. Like in Dwarven society, they're given huge honors. So like Legion of the Dead is one of the most honorable things you can do. That said, you are dead. Like functionally, you're dead once you join the Legion, which is fascinating, and it's a really cool DLC that goes into some fun Dragon Age lore. It has beautiful environments, like really, really fun environments. And
I
then,
really
yeah.
wish we could. Oh, sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was
I
it.
really
I was
wish
about
we
to move
could-
on. So
Okay. I really wish we could see the like it's I don't know why. Whenever we see dwarves in fantasy media, their civilizations are always in ruins.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I wish we could see the deep roads in their heyday.
like it's good old Tolkien and his Mines of Moria hitting us
Hey,
with the truth.
at least there's women in Dragon Age.
yeah.
How many games or media have you seen where there's no dwarven women?
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, the DLCs are all really good. Trespasser is in particular phenomenal. And this is the thing that we're talking about with Veilguard's marketing. Trespasser gets into the thing that kicks off Veilguard. Which is functionally the
From
end.
what I know of Trespasser, it's insane to me that isn't the end of the game.
Yeah.
I guess that's just what you
exactly.
guys are saying, but
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So there
I
is
haven't
like
played it
there's
yet.
a hint. The end of Inquisition itself is you solving the problem you're fighting. Like there is an ending to Inquisition, and then there's like a teaser with Solus, where Solus will leave your party.
Imagine if
Yeah.
you didn't buy that DLC and want the complete story and went to play Veilguard, though.
Yeah.
You'd be a little confused, but I
Yeah,
think
Very confused. Yeah.
Trespasser's ending itself is just really interesting because you learn a lot of stuff about Solus, which I'll not say specifics for the benefit of people that haven't played it yet and still want to finish it. But the
He's
gist
bald.
is, yeah, he's
Oh my
bald.
god.
He's bald and he's got weird powers. Is the gist, and he wants to use said weird powers to restore what he believes to be the better elven society.
To restore his
And-
hair. Oh wait, sorry.
Yeah, restore his hair. And
He's
Rogaine
researching
spell.
fantasy hair plugs.
the reason I specify this is because playing an elven inquisitor who has romanced him, you get a lot of unique dialogue with Solus and
Yeah.
Trespasser.
Mm.
Where you like have a lot of really deep conversations because the Solus's romance in the game, like obviously he leaves, like he dumps you and he leaves, and
Yeah.
it's even worse because he dumps you right after telling you some like earth-shattering information about your heritage, where he's
Yeah.
like the tattoos that elves have on the Dalish elves use on their face were actually slave markings and not markings that were honorable. They were the way because the Dalish remembered them as like, oh, these are markings to honor the gods, and that was true, but it was because your master would mark you as a slave, so that you would be honoring the gods with your appearance.
Ooh.
And he tells you that, and it's like, I can take them off of your face with this special spell I have, if you want to. And so, for my character, I was like, yeah, take them off. And then he dumps you immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It's the greatest case of whiplash I think I've ever
Oh.
seen. And what's great is he doesn't like leave after that. He's still in Skyhold. He's just there, and you can go have an incredibly awkward conversation. And
Yeah.
it's so funny. But you get to like redo a lot of that or rehash some of that in Trespasser, which is set
You
2
can
years
punch him
after
if
the
you
end
want.
of Inquisition.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's very, very, very cool to like get that conversation. But the gist is that you this is one of the 3 choices that carries over, which is the stuff we should mention, because Veilguard is taking 3 specific choices from Inquisition, and those 3 choices are the ultimate fate of the Inquisition, the decision that you make with Solus at the end, which is you either tell him I'm gonna kill you, or you tell him I want to stop you, basically. So it's like, how aggressive are you with Solus? And then it's who you romanced, which is obviously it's who you romanced, because your Inquisitor is supposed to show up in Veilguard, from what we know. So
Ooh.
I heard, don't you get a fresh new character creator for your Inquisitor?
you do.
think
We've
so.
been told that when the
You did
Inquisitor shows
for-
up, you're gonna get a character creator.
Well, I'm assuming it's similar to what happened to Hawk, where you're allowed
Yes.
to like customize Hawk as
You
You got to make
looked
him look
in,
like your
in
Hawk
2.
or your Inquisitor.
Or if you're like me and you forgot what your Hawk looked like, you just went with the default and never looked back.
Your default Hawk is so iconic that I will never
Yeah.
not use default Hawk.
He looks.
Yeah,
he
same.
looks
Though I
badass.
was furious that they didn't import the default female Hawk haircut. I was very
Yeah.
angry about
That's
that.
Ooh,
bizarre.
Really?
Because the
Yeah.
default, I was like, oh, do you want to customize Hawk? I was like, no, I played the default female Hawk. And then she shows up with like a bun, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Where's my spiky hair?
The question
Which
is,
I was very
will the
sad about.
character creator for the Inquisitor in Veilguard be a weird dark green shade on everything like it is? Otherwise,
It's
it's
gotta
not
be.
going to be
It's
the
gotta
same.
be. It's not gonna be
gonna
accurate.
authentic.
It's gonna be purple this time.
Mm.
Yeah,
Let's hope you
everything's purple
still
now.
can't see anything, and when you get out of it, you're like, oh my god, my nose.
But yeah, Veilguard taking only those 3 choices forward is very interesting, because there's a lot of things that happen both in Inquisition, Trespasser, and in the older games that really affect
Yeah.
the state of the world, namely who's ruling all of the nations that you deal with,
Yeah.
which I'm really curious how they're going to
upset.
address.
I'm really upset that they're not doing the tapestry this time.
Yeah, it seems like an odd choice, but also
It's so
from
cool, man.
marketing,
Yeah,
isn't
the keep.
so far what we've seen in Veilguard set in a different area?
It's set into Venter, but we
Yeah.
know that you go to Northern Thedas as well. Like, you stay in Northern
Okay.
Thedas.
I
So
wasn't sure. I didn't know
uh,
if they were just going to avoid it by not having us
And to like say
Step
the
foot
things
in
that are
that
really
area.
confusing, like I don't think we need to have minutia of everything kept. Like I don't care if we reference Fainreal from Dragon Age 2 again, or like I don't know, talk about Morgan and her weird dark ritual in the first game. But there are like things that get really odd at the end about that, where there's a couple of characters that are just kind of question marks. Like Morgan, we know shows up in Veilguard. Does she have a child or not? Because you could have a kid with her. So.
I kind of wonder if how much will be hand waved
Yeah.
with the 10-year gap between the games. That you know, it
and I'm
may
okay
just
with that
be
for
a
most
different world
things,
state, no matter
but,
what.
Like it's weird that because Morgan's characterization in Inquisition, if you say that you did have the child with her, is that she was like basically mega mom.
Yeah.
She loves her kid and will do anything to protect her
Milf to the
kid.
extreme.
And that means if I go into Veilguard and Morgan doesn't have any lines about having a child, I'm gonna be real confused.
I think
mean,
it's
I
going to
think-
be
Same character.
like a combination of like, it's set in Tevinter and it's 10 years. Whatever.
I mean, I think either way, her kid's going to be old enough to not really be around anymore.
Yeah, he's old enough to not be around, but the question mark then is that kid, if it's a 10-year gap, would probably be about 18 to 20. So I would feel like if you're a mother at that point, that's when you're worried. You're like,
Yeah.
what is my child off doing?
I almost wonder if they'll hand wave that by having her have a kid in the 10-year gap either way.
Oh my god.
Be hilarious.
Well, it might be. Well, and I'm saying,
Doesn't
like, it
matter
might
who
be-
the dad is.
It might be like a combination of like, I don't know, it's 10 years, things change in 10 years, but also it might be like, what are the most popular options that players picked? Let's just go with that as like the canon.
Yeah.
You know.
Which
I
is
wonder
interesting to me.
too. You said that it carries over romance choice. Maybe that's going to be just baked into the romance choice, basically.
Well, it carries
Like,
over the
did
romance
you-
choice for the Inquisitor, not for the hero Ferelden or Hawk.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
that's going to be another question mark. Like Hawk,
Again,
I
we're trying
understand
Dragon
because like
Age Keep right here, this beautifully made website that allows you
Yeah.
to track every single major decision from the other games.
So we have Hawk, we have the Inquisitor. What do we know? What the main character's title is for Veilguard? Is it Veilguard?
Rook. It's Rook.
Rook.
After chess pieces, it's all chess piece themed.
Oh no,
I-
it's gonna be tactical, and I'm gonna suck at it. God.
it's not that. Don't worry, you're fine.
That's why people are complaining right now. Is that
But yeah,
this is-
there's like
Yeah.
the two specific choices I'm most worried about is who is ruling for Elden is a big question mark. At the same time, I could totally get that they hand wave it as a new ruler because like I don't know, Alistair didn't want to be king that much, so maybe he retired or something. It's a weird choice, but all right. But then you have the question mark of who is like the ruler of the entire religion of the southern hemisphere of the world, and
And
that's
maybe
a
they'll just
decision that gets
nuke the
made
entire
in
world.
Inquisitor. Yeah, that's a choice that gets made in Inquisition, and if we don't know who it is, that means there's a bunch of characters that either can't show up or cannot reference what happened.
Maybe they pull a Skyrim, and it ends up that your character's the leader
I mean, what are the
of
chances
every
that they-
faction.
What are the chances that they separate things so much that they just try and not even mention it? Full stop.
I think that's probably likely.
I assume it's that. That's what they're gonna
just not
Andrastism
do.
gonna
is
talk
like
about it.
so baked into the game that I feel like they
Like, the
can't.
Chantry is so baked in, and it's so much to the point that they have like Tevinter has a black divine that I assume we're gonna meet
Yeah.
at some point, which is the like.
Well, that's the other thing is that Tevinter Andrastism is very different than like
Yeah, it's like
Ferelden
different
and
interpretation of the
Andraste,
same thing basically, and they
Which
don't
'cause we
recognize
don't
each
really-
other.
we haven't really explored Tevinter all that much, like either, if at least from what I remember.
There's a couple of
started
I think the only real explorations of Tevinter we've had is Dorian is from Tevinter, but you don't
Right.
actually go there ever. There is a collection anthology called Tevinter Nights, which came out in the lead up to Veilguard. That is like a bunch of short stories set in it, and the Netflix show Dragon Age Absolution is largely set in Tevinter.
Yeah.
I gotta watch that show
It's
again.
good.
You watched
yeah,
it.
I
and
watched
caught
it.
parts of it, and it seemed really good.
Yeah.
I watched it. It sets up for a season 2, which I don't think it's ever gonna get.
Maybe
Yeah.
the Veilguard will be.
Which is weird because there's like a lot of hanging plot threads at the end of that show.
Yeah.
But it is fun. And it does show you like the whole Deventer thing and how they think about magic and everything, which is really interesting. So yeah, I'll be really curious how Veilguard carries all that over and if it feels good enough compared to the past games. All right. That said, I think we're towards the end of like what we can say about Inquisition. Overall, how was everyone's thoughts of playing Inquisition?
Loved it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's one of those games where like you kind of accept it with open arms, even though it has many, 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 many problems, and you're like, I don't care, get over here, give me a big ol' hug.
Yeah, and I think Tal can attest to this. I think I'm beginning to enjoy it. I've always really liked the story and the world, but something about the design of the intro of Inquisition, I just really struggled to get into originally. I think this playthrough, which I started a bit before we actually started talking about it for the podcast, I just came back to it because I was like level 4 or something, but I think this playthrough, I just had to get over it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I do, especially after our discussion here, I do want to play more and I think finish out the whole game. But like previously, I still have a lot of problems with it. Really kind of bounced off of it hard, despite really, really liking a lot of the plot and a lot of the characters.
I also had a very similar experience to that where I think I've tried to pick up and play this game over the years like 4 or 5 times, and either like I got distracted by some other game, or the pacing is so wonky in the beginning that I just kind of bounce off and
Yeah.
move on to other things. But this is like the longest period of time that I've stuck with it, and I feel like now that I'm at Skyhole, I think things are really like starting to pick up.
I think maybe I just
don't.
don't like the hinterlands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
I
fair.
mean-
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people do, to be honest.
I know I don't.
And
Yeah, I think the game really starts to shine once you get into it, but you have to get into it. Like you have to get past the hinterlands to like really sort of see the game as they want you to see it.
Plus, I'll fully admit that it's like for someone who has played the other two games, but the lore and trying to remember all of that stuff, it kind of comes and goes in my head a lot. Um, Trying to remember what all of these things are, and everyone's relation to each other at the start of the game, and all these different factions, and then you have like all of the mechanics with like the war table, you have all this crafting stuff. It's like very intimidating at first, which I think is part of the reason I bounced off of it so many times. But after I'm trying to go in and look at some more lore stuff, I'm trying to like refamiliarize myself with it. Does make it a lot easier to just kind of know what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sensible. Okay, so that's our Inquisition portion. We talked about it generally in positives. Moving into Veilguard. So I think the only appropriate question I can ask about Veilguard to round us off is everyone planning on making a character, and what character are you making? What's your start?
I don't know yet. I'm waiting to see. So I very much like to go into games blind. I don't really like.
Have you even watched like
I haven't watched. I've skimmed through the gameplay that they've shown, but I haven't really like sat down and watched it. So I'm waiting to like get the game and like see the character customization options, see the class options, see the abilities, and then I'm gonna decide what sort of character I want to play.
You're also not afraid of restarting a game like 8 times.
Oh yeah, I love starting a game 8 times.
Very fair.
That was a huge mental block for me when I realized I screwed up my I was having a hard time like restarting Dragon's Dogma 2 even when I'd soft locked myself.
Mhm.
I want to try that game out.
Yeah, I've restarted Dragon Age Inquisition so many times that I can run the like beginning part in my sleep pretty much. I could probably do a speed run of just the intro.
I know that there is like a Spellblade like build you can make, right?
Yeah.
How does that work? Do you have to start off as like a regular mage and then you
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
one of the
spec
mage
into it
builds.
later
Yeah.
on? Okay.
Yeah, Knight
'Cause
Enchanter.
Because I
Are there any
usually go
different
with, like,
classes
a-
than before?
It's still
There's-
rogue knight or rogue warrior mage, but the
Yeah,
the
but
big
there's like
difference this time,
specializations.
the specializations, and you pick a faction at the start to be your backstory, where you're like
So
you were
is
part of
Spellblade-
this
Is
faction.
Spellblade a specialization for?
Yeah, it's one of the skill
Okay.
specializations. But you also wizards start with a like sword thing as
Okay.
one of their weapons. So you have a staff and you have like a sword orb thing.
Because
I think that-
normally I go like sword and board, or like I just want to hit things with a giant sword. But recently I've been trying to do more like melee mixed with like spell casting type. And so
Mhm.
it seems like Spellblade is kind of that's what that is.
Yeah, totally.
I'd like to know if loot is still going to be entirely randomized or at least somewhat geared towards your character.
From what I understand, I think I read somewhere where it's like geared toward whatever class that you
Yeah,
have.
it's like a loot is hand placed in Veilguard, and it will correspond to what class you're playing. So it'll
Which
be like
essentially means you
in a
have to
place you
place
would find a
loot-
bow, you would find a sword if you're a warrior.
Which essentially means you have to place loot in a level 3 different times, like 3 different passes, which is kind of nuts.
I'm also a big fan of the and I guess this comes as no surprise to Ryan and Alex, who I played D&D with. But I am a big fan of these spell slinging swordsmen. So that may be something I'd
I guess our
look for in a new-
frontline wizard.
Yep.
Hey, it worked eventually.
I will say I don't play.
How many times did I res you against the undead minotaurs?
Until I died, I think.
3, 4.
I will
Oh
say
wait, that was
I,
actually after I died.
I don't normally play like spellcasters. I love the little animation that mages have in Inquisition, where they do like a couple of little twirls and then they do this cool like little spin.
That's
Yeah.
why I
It's
mostly
really
played as a
cool.
mage. I think they look the coolest when they're fighting.
That's
Inquisition.
fair,
I-
that's fair.
I feel like a lot of games, the mage falls a little flat
Mhm.
in terms of that, and I'm really glad that Inquisition makes the mage stylish, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just I have a wand,
You actually-
fireball.
You actually cast spells by doing interpretive dance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then later
Um,
in the game, when you do your specializations, the Knight Enchanter, which is what I'm assuming is going to be kind of similar to the
One of the most
Spellblade.
busted builds in the game.
So much fun to play, though. So fun.
That was my first Inquisition character, and I think because this time around I've been playing 2 in Inquisition because I remember Origins well enough that I don't need to replay it. But I've been going through and I played a warrior in 2. I put a warrior in Inquisition. I think I'm going to play a warrior in Veilguard and play the most Grey Warden to have ever Grey Wardened.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I feel like that's
I,
going to be a fun time.
I like playing as the mage in these games too, because oftentimes the plot revolves around like mage rights, basically.
Yeah.
And so, like, instantly, my character is of some importance.
Oh, yeah, when I said I like to go in blind and I don't know what character I'm playing, I do just want to make it clear I have played a mage every single game, and I will be playing a mage, but that's,
Yeah, there
that's
you
all I
go.
know so far.
Yeah.
You're gonna take a passing look at the other ones at least and
Yeah,
pretend
I'll
like
take
you
a
might pick one.
glance.
Yeah. All right. Well, that seems to be our Veilguard thoughts coming into Veilguard, and our final thoughts on Inquisition for the moment, unless Wyatt finishes it and we have a full spoiler cast. That'd be quite fun.
I want to. It's not going to be like the most comprehensive playthrough because I'm trying to finish it as quickly as humanly possible.
Don't do the side stuff. Just do the main story.
Yeah, I actually think I spent too long, like, because I don't like the hinterlands that much. I think I was
I
spending
think-
too long on side stuff in this playthrough, and I was like, oh, here's a little side area I've never been to.
I
Let
do
me
think that
waste
was part of my
45
problem.
minutes on that.
Also, I don't think I've seen any of. I don't know if you go to Orlais or see Orlais at all in Veilguard. It's going to be hard to top how pretty Orlais looks in
Oh, yeah.
Inquisition.
Yeah.
Oh, mwah,
Beautiful.
gorgeous.
All right. Well, on that note, it's the end of our show, and we're gonna see you next time.
Man.
That's
No
not- that's the
shout
show.
outs.
Well, no,
No
the
shout
shout out
outs.
was what character we're making. It's the Dragon Age episode.
No shoutouts.
It was what character we're making. That was the
No
point.
shoutouts.
You want to shout
Shout
something
out
out
to
right now?
Barry.
You have like 5 seconds.
Well, I don't have one ready.